Hello and welcome to the BNB show. My name is Brandon. This over here is Brendan of Seahawks Brendon Nelson. He joins me over here this week as I had joined him over last week as we are completing up our series here of looking a little bit as a deep dive perspective into the Seattle Seahawks. But Brendan, how you doing this fine late spring day?
I'm doing well. I'm doing well, man. Hope you are as well, and hope everyone out there is too.
Yeah, feeling subtly excited for this, even though it is kind of the quieter period of the off season a bit. It is getting exciting looking up to this future year, knowing the schedule, knowing when the players are locked in. Certainly having a chance to look a little bit deeper into these rookies, Brendan, I think has made you and I both even a little bit more excited because we really do get to see more than the detriments to their game. We're getting to see really what they do well on the football field and why Seattle probably gravitated towards them in this process. Would you not agree?
Yeah. I mean, like I said last week, when you get the opportunity to know that the guy is on your team and you start looking at them, you can spend a lot more time on it, and I think that really helps. You can really start digging deep into what makes the player interesting or appealing, and I think that's really good.
It is, especially because it always gives you a little bit of a view into the team's philosophy and what they're attempting to try to do. I think by seeing what they do, kind of in perspective. Well, what does this player do well? What is it that they're trying to get from him on the field that makes sense within the course of this team? And we have ourselves a good number of prospects here on the back end of the draft to take a look at. Again, last week we were over on Seahawks Brendon Nelson and we looked at the first couple of rounds in this draft. And so today we're going to be looking at the back half of the draft as the Seattle Seahawks indeed did trade out of the third round to pick up an extra third rounder next year, but that did give them two fourth round picks, which we've got a couple guys then in this round and a couple guys in the fifth round to sort of look through here on this one. But let's start out, or just one guy here in the fourth round, sorry. But we got our first fourth round pick, our first pick there of essentially then day three, a little bit of a long wait from round two, Brendan. But they took Cameron Young, who is a guy that I've struggled with. Let's get the initial breakdown, if you could, on. Yeah.
Wait. Who did we take first, Bradford or Cameron Young?
Oh, Bradford. Sorry, I'm spacing. My bad.
Hmm.
Sorry,
Yeah.
folks. My bad. So Bradford. Yeah, no, that's what I liked actually. So we have Bradford of LSU, a guard, right guard, out of LSU. This was a pick actually that I did warm up to, but at first was a little bit. What I don't understand on this one. But give me a breakdown of your kind of initial deep thoughts on Anthony Bradford.
Yeah, I would say of our 10 picks in this draft, this is the one that grew on me the most. Not that I disliked it at the start, I didn't. But this is probably the one that grew on me the most from when we drafted him to now. Because now that I've had a chance to really take a look at him, it's been really, really helpful to getting an idea of what kind of player he is. This was a guy who we had in for a top 30 visit, and that was the only reason why I looked at him, actually. He was not initially on my list, and the only reason why I actually did any scouting on him at all, I remember, was because we had him in for that visit, and I figured, well, if we think he's worth looking at, then he must be worth looking at for me. So Anthony Bradford, LSU, definitely going to be a right guard in the NFL. He was mostly a right guard in college, although he did actually play a little left tackle in 2021, probably indicative of some issues that they had with their talent pool over on the LSU offensive line. But he's meant to be a right guard pretty clearly, I think.
Agreed.
And the first thing that really stands out here is a lack of experience, I think. That's the first thing that I think stands out with him. I believe he started 17 games in his college career. Basically started 6 games last year. No, I think he actually started like 4 games in 2021 and then 13 games in 2022 or something like that. So we're talking about a guy who's very raw. And I think that's a big part of the reason why he's fallen as far as he has in the draft, because you look at his physical profile and it is really, really impressive. He is a phenomenal, and I do mean that. After having a look at his combine numbers, his measurements, watching him play, he is a phenomenal athlete. He is in the 90th percentile for weight for guards, for interior guards, 332 pounds, and he's also recorded one of the fastest 40 times and 10-yard splits of any interior offensive lineman. He's right up there in like the 85th to 90th percentile in those areas as well. He jumped well. He had a really high bench press score at the combine as well. So the mix of size and athletic ability is really kind of remarkable here.
Long arms too, right?
Let me see here. Well, 33 and a half inches, which is actually not remarkable compared to other guards. It's like 58th, but it's good. It's not a problem, that's for sure. I mean, they're clearly good enough for him to play left tackle in 2021, so they're at least that good. But this guy is a unique athlete, and you take a look at that profile, you would expect him to go much higher in the draft than he did, and I think it's just because he didn't play that much at the at LSU. Like I said, basically 17 or 18 career starts. So I think we may have gotten a guy who's going to be much better than his draft position, but it's going to take some time. Like, I wouldn't expect him to play this year. Some people are starting to talk about him versus Phil Haynes, and I could see him taking Phil Haynes' job because Haynes is not that great. But more realistically, I think that you put this guy in the oven for a little while, you're going to get something really good by 2024, maybe even 2025, because he offers so much of what you want and even some stuff you didn't necessarily want, because that combination of mobility and strength is just not what I was expecting when I first started looking at this guy.
Yeah, I mean, it's the testing numbers are no doubt very impressive. The problem that came down to me with him initially, especially when the Hawks drafted him, was just the fact that the testing numbers and the way he moved didn't necessarily show up on tape in the ways where he looked anywhere near comfortable moving on tape or nearly as quick as his testing scores sometimes seem to indicate a little bit. It is, though, legitimate to your point all the way down the line. There's not one of those numbers that you go out and go, that's not a spot that's, above average to even above that. So it does come down to, well, maybe like you say, it's a rawness aspect of things. They just need to teach him how to better move under control. This is what you pay your offensive line coach to do, is essentially, round these guys out. I'm giving you this great talent. You've got to find a way to, even though you've got a lot of work to do, I'm not asking you to take the overachiever. I'm taking the guy now that you're going to have a lot to really build upon, as long as you get him right, technically speaking. But when he is moving in space, Brendon, he struggles to find his guy. He slows down considerably. I don't know if it's maybe because he's just kind of measuring where he's trying to go, but he's got very heavy hands. He's very strong. That's something that's going to translate to the NFL level immediately, where when he hits those guys off the line of scrimmage with that initial punch, he's going to jolt them back. Now, there's an ability on the tape for those guys to really recover with him at times to where he's not able to sustain it. But here's the rub for me on that a bit, Brendon, is we have one of the quicker burst guys in the NFL in Kenneth Walker. So when you have Kenneth Walker on the football field and you have a guy that can just get that initial bam and the hole's there only for that split second, but Walker's quick enough to get through that hole at that point. That's where maybe those pairing of those two talents really works together, especially like you said, when he gets down the road a little bit, maybe a little bit able to sustain the blocks a little bit better and just kind of stay latched on and keep it going up the football field. But the power is there for sure. You see that on tape all over the place, snap in and snap out.
I got to tell you, I watched the tape of the LSU game against Alabama last year. That was the game that LSU won in overtime, if I recall. And, great game, but I didn't mind what I saw from him when he played in space. And it wasn't anything over the top. He wasn't like Jason Kelsey out there, but they used him a lot as like the seal blocker, where he would start on the right side and then go over to the left side to throw down the seal block on Will Anderson. And I was like, okay, he looks fine doing that kind of stuff. He's not just stuck in the phone booth. I don't know. I didn't hate what I saw in that game. And, a lot of people have been talking about Anthony Bradford with regard to the Georgia game, where he went up against Jalen Carter and actually played fairly well. So I wanted to watch the other game where he went up against the super elite defensive player in Will Anderson. And not only did I think he did fine, I was kind of impressed with his movement skills. I saw some plays where he would climb up to the second level to block linebackers. There was one play where he was blocking in front of a wide receiver screen. I didn't mind it. So I mean, obviously it's not great yet, but I can see where there's some hope there.
Well, and the rub for me comes down to it on this pick, Brendon, and its success or not, is not going to be whether or not this guy can drive guys off the line of scrimmage in the run blocking game. It's going to come down to two components. Number one, can he move in space? And can he do that successfully? Because I mean, I'm glad to see that you did see it on the tape for what you watched with it. I didn't on mine, and I was really locking into it pretty considerably, especially on second look through after he was drafted, going back and locking into that. Just more often than not, he just did not get to his block or just land what he needed to do comfortably or keep his feet. There was a lot of losing his feet in the open space at times too, for what I saw. But all that being said, it's great that you did see that over there on that point, but that's a big part of what is going to either make or break him as a particular player, I think, in this scheme, is whether or not he is going to be able to execute those blocks, or if he's just your typical kind of traditional Seahawks offensive lineman that's just going to kind of try to maul in space. And that's just what he is, because the other second part of this, of course, Brendan, is the pass blocking, which is definitely a work in progress at this point.
Yeah, I do agree it's a work in progress. I think the bigger problem with him is lateral movement. Like when he's dealing with a speed rusher,
Mm-hmm.
I feel like his ability to shuffle laterally is a bigger problem than his ability to work in space. So that I mean, I granted those things kind of sort of go hand in hand, but that to me is the bigger concern with him.
Yeah, no, it's worse for him as a pass blocker than it is the movement in space, for sure. It just wasn't as what I was looking for, I guess, Brendan, was a guy that they go out and they draft that's really comfortable moving in space, like Olu Oluwatimi is. Like, we'll talk about him, where you get a guy that you can see him moving in space, moving comfortably. The fit makes total sense. This guy from an athletic profile makes sense. I just don't know if on the the tape with that. But we're a little bit probably differed on that one. But the pass blocking, we are of like mind, where that is his biggest main issue. I mean, that's where, and it is the twitchy guys. But the benefit, of course, of that is that if he's a right guard, he's a one going against the one text most of the time, zero text, and he's getting double team help a lot of the time. So that gets a little bit neutralized at the next level.
Right. So that was my main exposure to Bradford. I wanted to watch every play that he played from the Alabama game. And again, he held his own. So that's kind of cool, right? He goes up against the two best defensive players in college football last year. And I thought he came out fine or not amazing or anything, but relatively fine in both.
Yeah, I mean, it's Anderson's an edge, of course, so it's not exactly a mano a mano. It's a different kind of battle. Like, he's coming down on Will Anderson in the run game. You'd expect Anderson at 245 to lose that, especially because Anderson's not a twitchy jump around you like a jackrabbit kind of player, edge wise in the way he goes at it. But it's nonetheless, it's good that you saw it in some place, because it was a place that in all the film that I watched on him over and over again, game after game, where he just wasn't comfortable out there. You could see going in space. He wants to be right at the line of scrimmage and kind of getting into guys. And bull rushers, he's going to neutralize those guys, Brendan. He'll have no problem against bull rushers. The guys trying to put the long arm on him, he'll shut those guys down in their tracks. I think even from a day one standpoint, it is those twitchy guys. It is the guys with maybe some pass rush moves where they can chain him together on him, where when he has to start moving those feet, picking them up, putting them down, then it does get a little bit worrisome there. But right guard's easier than left guard. This is the big difference with those two. It's because strong side of the formation, right-handed is the tendency of teams in the NFL, offensively speaking. So most plays tend to go the right side. Hence, he tends to usually have the center is usually also a helpful double team block more often than not, certainly more than the left guard's going to get. So this will help. I think what I'm trying to say there, Brendan, is this will help to kind of neutralize maybe some of these what we call them, little holes that are currently in the game.
Yeah, and beyond that, also, I think the other way to look at that, I always think of like the NBA colliery with this, where you have an offensive line, and you look at our offensive line right now. You've got Charles Cross can play in space, right?
Mm-hmm.
Abe Lucas can play in space. At some point, Oluwatimi will be our starter. I'm pretty confident in that. Maybe not this year, but next year for sure, and going forward after that possibly, can play in space, which we'll talk about him in a minute. And then I think Damian Lewis is probably going to be a free agent next year, and we probably are not going to bring him back. So therefore, I look at that and I go, okay, that's an opportunity for you to go get a left guard that can play in space, somebody with a little more mobility, unlike somebody more so than a Damian Lewis. So at that point, if Anthony Bradford is starting for you at right guard, and he's the only offensive lineman you have that can't really play in space well, you can mask that. You can overcome that because everybody else can. It's like a basketball team that is really good on defense, even though they have one guy who is not good on defense. If the other four guys are good, they can cover up for him. So it might be something like that too.
It's been historically the place on the line of scrimmage that you can overcome, whether it be that it's the worst guy that you have in your offensive line, maybe just from a talent standpoint, or it's a guy that's not as mobile as the other guys in your offensive line. So that has also historically fitted to it. I worry a little bit with where you come back from the Rams offense, and a lot of what they've done is get both of those two guards, both of them that can move, being that when you go up against especially 3-4 teams, those are the two guys that are naturally uncovered at the line of scrimmage. So those are the guys that are naturally have an ease of motion to get out there into space and pull that out in front. Or if you're going to have those guys have to get to a reach block, a same kind of staple that's within this offense, where I've got to get him from here over to here to this block. The guy's not just man up, right up, heads up over him. It's got to where he's got to move that lateral in space off the snap a couple of snaps to hit that block. Can he get that done too? And that's the thing I worry a little with him on it. I don't think it's something he can't overcome. And Brendon, he's got the athletic stuff you brought up at the top. I think that's important to lead with that, especially with this guy, because the goods are kind of there. It's just making it show up a little bit more on the film, more on game day a little bit more. So that is something that you would hope that your offensive line coach could get refined.
Yeah, I think in terms of RAS, which is what relative athletic score. He's like I think he's one of the 30 most athletic guards relative to his size ever. So it's historic.
That is
his combination of size and agility is actually remarkable in terms of his testing numbers anyway. Again, just because he can do it wearing his underwear on a, Lucas Oil field doesn't mean he can do it on the actual football field, but it's indicative of something.
Well, and like you said too, they did put him out there at left tackle, which is, there was they had the whole Ed Orgeron guy leave, and then the other guy come in. There's probably a bit of a turnover there at LSU, which caused him to be forced out there to left tackle. But simply the fact that they thought in the SEC, this guy is athletic and moves well enough to be able to handle himself out there on the blind side against some of the best edge rushers that are out there, does speak to the level of, at least the LSU coaching staff was seeing this thing did exist on the practice field, looking better, more comfortable within it. So that should, I think, just all the much more encourage us. This is one of those things why it starts to grow on you, this guy, a little bit more when you look at him a little bit more in depth from that standpoint, I think, than just my initial blush was on him. But should be a good player. We got a couple donations. I'm sorry I'm a little late on acknowledging you guys, but thank you for these donos. William Leiter with a $10 donation. Hope you're having a good night. William, he says, imagine it now. In a future game, Witherspoon makes a great defensive play, and the NFL on Fox cuts to a commercial break. They show the slow-mo replay, and Spoon Man by Soundgarden plays in the background. Just fits, doesn't it?
That's one of my favorite songs ever. So if that ends up being the play, I'm pretty in support of that.
I'm gonna have to do my next highlight video on Witherspoon, Brendon. I'll just have to have just the spoon sound, and it'll be like darkness, and you just hear that.
Yeah, because if you use the actual song, Tower Records or whoever owns that song is going to come down on you with totally fire and vengeance.
My butt's going to be in there with real spoons on the mic here, just doing this. Yeah. Like it'll be me literally, because for that reason, they don't mess around with the audio stuff, Brendon. They don't play with that at all. But it's a natural fit, William. It goes together. If they don't, somebody needs to be fired at Fox if they don't use that, because I already know they've got all the grunge songs, right? They're always playing Pearl Jam or Soundgarden or Alice in Chains when they're doing cutaways.
Yeah, they do.
In Seattle. Right. So, you already got the rights. Might as well use it. But I love it, William. And thank you, man. Appreciate the dono. Randall McDaniel with a $20 donation. Thank you, Randall, for the $20 donation. And I hope you're having a good night, brother. Says, just because I haven't been in a while. Go Hawks. Well, no worries, man. You got a new baby, so it's understandable when you got a new baby that
very nice.
Don't always have the time. Yeah, he's getting it done out there, Randall, out there in the Midwestern portion of the state. But thank you, Randall. Appreciate the $20 donation, man. And I hope you're having a great night. Summer's just about having. It's warming up here. Is it getting warm over there for you guys?
Oh yeah. We kind of peaked though. The initial heat wave kind of peaked, and now we're settling into a more comfortable area right now.
Typical Pacific Northwest
which is good. I don't like it when it's too hot. That nobody likes that.
No, you guys aren't built for it over there. You don't have AC, and it's miserable. We got that stuff over here, so we love the heat over here because we always come back in our house and it's like an ice box if you need it to be. It's beautiful. Well, let's move on here to our next guy, our next cat here in the fourth round, and that would be Cameron Young. Mississippi State defensive tackle. And you're warmer on this one, so you hype up the audience a little bit on this one, Brendan, because I'm still, this is the one above all else in this draft I'm still struggling with.
Well, I think the thing that stands out, one thing that I do want to draw attention to here is that Mississippi State over the last couple years has run a lot of the 3-3-5 defense that we're supposedly going to run, which I like that because it indicates that he's going to have a pretty smooth transition to playing from that defense to our defense. So that's one thing that I think you can get a little bit excited about. It seems like we took a guy knowing that he would be a good fit in what we're trying to do. He's got pretty long arms. He's got strong, powerful punches. He's somebody who, at the college level at least, showed that he was able to absorb blocker attention and free up the linebackers behind him. Again, you always have to wonder how many of these things are going to translate to the NFL. Some things are not going to. But one thing that I did hear also from camp is that apparently he boosted his weight up to like 320. He was at 304 at the combine, so he's up to 320. And it seems like the implication is that he's going to try to maintain that. That's not just like, oh, I haven't been working out in a while, wait, and I'm going to lose it by the time the season starts.
He played out last year. He played 320.
Yeah, I did notice that too. So it seems like he slimmed up for the combine, which, I mean, didn't do a lot for him, if we're being honest. He still ran a 5.140. But I do kind of like that he's getting a little bit bigger. And, you know, I don't love the pick. I do feel like this is probably the one time in this draft where we decided, okay, we have to get a nose tackle with this pick. We put it off long enough. Maybe we're reaching. Maybe we're not getting the best possible value. I don't know if I think it was a reach. I just think there were probably better value picks there, but we just decided, okay, we need to stop messing around. We need at least one nose tackle we kind of like. So we decided to go for it here. And I'm definitely way more at peace with that kind of stuff when you get down to day 3. I think that at that point, big boards kind of blend together to the point where value is so close between, 20, 30, even 40 different players that you're kind of hard pressed to really reach that badly on pretty much any pick. With some exceptions, of course, like you could be like the Niners and you could take Jake Moody in the 3rd round. That's bad, but
I think it's a fantastic point on your part, Brendan, because if you find yourself in a given draft late into the 4th round, kissing up onto the 5th round, and that's the first point where you go, that might have been a reach. But really, that's the first honest point that you can really truly say that at that point in the draft. That is almost a successful draft in itself, just being able to say that simply, isn't it? And you may not like the Zach Charbonnet pick. You may not like the Derek Hall pick, but you can't argue with the fact the team went with the value of their board there, which is the only thing we can really ask for. I think at fans, no, they're never going to be mind melded to you to wanting your picks or your guys. But as long as you can see that the team's operating from the standpoint of wanting that value selection imparted, you get to the late 4th, and that's the first time you're pulling on that chain, that particular chain. I'm okay with it. And Brendan, he was getting pretty. He was getting some pressure there from the local media. They're not big on pressure out of the Seattle media local wise, but that day 2 there, they're like, hey, Johnny, come on, where's the defense tackle? What are you doing?
Where's the beef?
What are you doing? Where's the beef? Yeah. They were all over him.
Oh yeah. So I mean, I wouldn't say that I love the pick. At the end of the day, he is more of a typical nose tackle, somebody who I think, according to PFF, in 41 career games, he has 40 career QB pressures. But, you can certainly live with that from a nose tackle. I think you can live with a nose tackle that doesn't generate a lot of pressure. I do think he has potential to get better as a player, though, because he's not a great block shedder yet, but he's got those long arms, and you got to believe that eventually that's going to parlay itself into the ability to be a good block shedder. He does have a little bit of a bull rush, although that's kind of it against the pass. Probably going to be a 2-down player in the NFL, probably going to be somebody who plays on rundowns pretty much exclusively. That's basically how he was used at Mississippi State, if we're being honest. So why would it change in the NFL? But I don't know. I thought the pick was okay. I don't love it. I'm not super hyped on it. I'm not going to sit here and try to sell it really hard to anybody. But I don't know. I don't feel like there's enough to dislike.
Yeah, it's not something that's going to make me tear my hair out. I've gone back, especially prepping here for this show, and I'm also going to try to do a video on him here shortly, and trying to kind of find more of those glimmers of spots with him. I think what you talked about in him being in that 3-man front as he was at times, They also asked him within that 3-man front to not do as necessarily much two gapping, but a little bit of an attempting to penetrate, not very successful in doing so, but at the very least, he could then eat the two blockers up, which you would like to see on that play from the zero tech if they're going to slant one side or another off the line of scrimmage at the snap. And that's something that you saw him be able to do when he would get there quick enough to get to that spot where he demands a right, let's say it's a left guard who's blocking to a zone and he's got to pick up a near defender. He gets himself into that near defender space. So now that guy can't peel back off to the linebacker. He's going to come back to his coach, the left guard will, and say, well, the tackle entered my zone. You guys tell me to stay on the near side defender if he gets there before I peel down the linebacker. Little things like that he might help in him from the zero tech standpoint, but he's got no pass rush repertoire to speak of at all. I mean, there's no rip move, swim move, long arm bull rush, spin move. There's nothing there as far as outside of just he puts his hands on the other guy's chest and pushes at the snap.
It's very simple.
It's a very simple pass rush. It's a 1972 pass rush, but he does play with a lot of effort. He does try to put a lot into it. He gives there's a little bit of crack of him giving some pressure from time to time on some of these snaps I'm finding from Brendon. It's nowhere near consistent. It's nowhere, it shows here and here and here and here. It's just, there's occasionally something you get from him where he's showing a little bit of a burst with it. So like you said, he has the physical, a little bit like Bradford here, where the physical raw goods are there. You just don't see it onto the film as much coming together there, where you see the one, but the other is he just kind of is a little slow off the snap. No real burst to speak of, no quickness to speak of. I
didn't see much of any kind of burst.
No. And look, zero ticks, you wouldn't expect that from them most of the time, but you'd also then expect them to be a little bit more. I want him to be more of an island, I want him to be more of that Gilbert Brown root down middle of a spot. You ain't moving me off that spot, even with two blockers type guy. And he just wasn't often enough for me where I felt like he'd hold up okay against double teams, but not consistently just root down like you really do need at the base point as far as the first skill off the boat for those guys being that.
Yeah. I mean, does it make you feel any better if you know that the Mississippi State run defense did improve noticeably from his first year to the following 3 years?
It does. Yeah, no, I think it's definitely an encouraging stat on that part of it. I will say too, when you watch the tape, because today, Brendon and I was in the middle of doing the cut-ups on this one, so I was really looking a little bit deeper at him. When he's off the field, because they do the rotation like all these college teams do, they rotate these guys through. And when he's off the field, there's a noticeable dip in that team's ability to stop the run. From what I saw here, just kind of tearing through it today. So, he's got some solid stuff to go up. He's played a decent amount of college football. So wasn't graded out great last year down the line, Brendon. 65 defense, 69 run, 63 tackle, 59 pass rush. So it's all a work in progress with that guy, but some people have made I know 710 was trying to make this argument. I don't know if you buy it. Is he the most important Seahawks draft pick in the 2023 draft, Brendon?
Cameron Young?
Yeah. That's what
that's an interesting angle. I don't know how that could be the case.
Because you don't have a zero tech behind him. Well, like if Witherspoon goes down, you got a cornerback. If Charbonnet goes down, you got a Walker. If Hall goes down, you got other edges.
Well, I think that baked into this, the thing to understand is that Schneider kind of came out and said, we don't really care about nose tackle that much. We think it's a devalued position now. It's very easy to just find guys who can be adequate nose tackles, and rookies can jump right in and play. And we've got a bunch of guys we've got a collection of nose tackle type guys in our camp right now, kind of competing against each other. Like we let Robert Cooper go, but you've still got Tavai. You still got the Rutgers guy, Mafi Ija. I can't remember how to pronounce his name, but the guy from Rutgers. And it seems to me it's more about that than it is like we're counting on this guy to do massive things for us. It's just not an important position.
Agreed. John's definitely signaled here that he's not put it in that same import as fans and other people might conventionally think. And some of this could be just the evolution of defenses and where this goes. And that makes sense from that standpoint. And we'll see if it bears out those fruits from that, Brendon, or if they are a little bit thinner there. I don't think he's the most important one. I think you could eventually find some other zero text and stuff out there on the market. If you desperately need to go get some guys, you could go get some guys. But he's the one that's the toughest sell for me in this draft, Brendan. I love this draft. I give it an A-. I'm over the moon with this draft, but he was just the one on it that I was just a little bit not so sure of. Yeah, just not so sure.
I get it.
All right, let's get to let's move on into the 5th round, Brendan, which is my favorite round of this draft. So let's get into that. Out of my least favorite round to my most favorite round. And let's take our first 5th rounder, Brendan. Tell me your thoughts on Mike Morris.
Right, Mike Morris. So this guy's really kind of tough because watching the tape of him, especially last year, doesn't really do you that much good. It's one of those things where what he was doing for the Michigan Wolverines in 2022 is not going to be anywhere close to what he does for us in 2023 and going forward. So it would seem anyway. So it's a difficult evaluation, but we can try. And in order to do it, I actually had to look at his 2021 tape a lot more because that was the year when Michigan was kind of deploying him everywhere. They, at that point, still had Hutchinson, and they had, who was their other edge player that year?
Ojabo.
Yeah, Ojabo. So Morris needed to find other ways to contribute, and he did that by playing a lot as a defensive tackle, playing over the offensive tackle, stuff like that. So watching that tape, you see the versatility that I think makes him such an appealing prospect. You see him playing inside, outside, over the tackle. And it encourages you to believe that he's going to be able to do what we are apparently going to ask of him in 2023. So it's one of those things where, unfortunately, his best year featured him playing almost exclusively as just an edge rusher. And if he truly has bulked up to 295, which he apparently has, that's not going to happen in the NFL. There are no, at least I can't think of any 300-pound 3-4 edge rushers.
No,
that's not going to happen.
No, I don't think so. I don't think that's the new evolution.
Yeah, it's going to be the new meta in like 2050. We'll have gone so far the other way that somebody's just going to throw a 300-pounder on the edge, and it's going to be amazing. But
they'll be 4-4 at that point. Those guys will be running 4-4 or 300 pounds by that point. Without that's how freakish they'll be.
Right. So Mike Morris, he's got good size, noticeably tall, which is, by the way, going to hurt him a little bit in the leverage game, but a unique size. He did not test well at all, but it seemed like he was just kind of having a bad day. He does not play the way that he tested at all. He ran like a 5-second 40. There's no way that on the football field he's that slow. I don't buy it. 1.72 10-yard split. I don't really buy that either. It didn't match up with what I saw on the field. And basically, you take a look at what happened in 2021 for an elite Michigan defense. Like I said, he played 173 snaps as an edge rusher, 66 over the tackle as like more of a defensive end type. And then he played 81 snaps as a defensive tackle, like on the interior. So moving all over the place for that defense. He gets graded out well in pretty much all areas. Nothing over the top, nothing great, but he's effective against the run. He's effective against the pass. I think that the most interesting thing about him, because the game that I watched, well, the first game I watched was the Iowa game from this most recent year where he was playing edge. But even in that game, he had one really cool play where he
standing up.
Yeah, he's standing up like in the middle, and then he kind of stunts to the inside and works his way through the center and gets that sack.
Didn't it look clowny-like to you?
Little bit, yeah. And you look at that and you kind of go, okay, maybe that's how this is going to work at the NFL level. But I really wanted to go back and watch his games from 2021. So I watched his Wisconsin game in particular. And in that game, I think he played 10 snaps inside, 10 snaps over the tackle, and 10 snaps outside the tackle approximately. So a lot of variety in that game. So I got to see it all. And you see the strength against the run. You see his ability to hold his ground against the run. You see the ability to generate some pass rush. Not a lot of pass rush moves. It's a fairly simple package right now, but there's still time there. Remember, we were talking about a guy who did not play basically at all in 2020, had a part-time role in 2021, and then 2022 was his first year as like the full-time player. So this is not a guy.
Just to illustrate too, to make sure, 2021 was a lost year due to COVID. So that was it. He got that. That's why he didn't have that production in there in 21.
Yeah, correct. So let's see here. So there's a lot of knockback on his pass rush reps, even though he's not putting on any amazing moves or anything like that. You notice a lot of knockback on his moves. I saw a really nice swim move that he put on a guard at one point. So you do start to see a few of those things come together. You see those plays where he starts on the line with his hand in the dirt, and then he breaks off into coverage right at the snap. And you see, hey, one thing that this team has tried to do in the last few years is drop defensive linemen into coverage, and it doesn't ever work well. Maybe this is going to be the guy who actually has the athletic profile to do it effectively, because in previous years, we've done it with guys like 30 billion year old Carlos Dunlap. Maybe somebody like this can actually do it,
Possibly. Puna Ford.
Yeah. There's some plays where he's making the run stuff while still engaged with the defensive linemen, where he shows his strength. There's some plays where they're double teaming him. That's one thing that I noticed as this game went on. He just started getting double teamed a lot. So there's a wide variety of things to really like with this player, I think. And I thought he was going to go in the 3rd or 4th round. After his bad testing, I was thinking, okay, maybe 4th round. I didn't think he was going to be there in the 5th. So this was, I think, a really great pick because of that.
I find myself this year, as much as any year, Brendan, really feeling like that the testing numbers have become this thing that are starting to overweight at times the film. And we have a couple guys in this 5th round that I think are going to be prime examples of this. But indeed, I do believe that he can play inside. You mentioned that stand-up Iowa sack that he had where he was inside, then he sort of just stunts around post-snap. Just causing just ultimate havoc. They call it the spinner roll, is what that's actually the technical term I've heard it referred to, where you have essentially a guy stand up over the top of the guard and they're standing, and then the guard doesn't really know if they're coming or not, doesn't know if they're just going to shoot laterally or not. But what I like about it, Brendan, is you start to think about it from a visual perspective, is if you're thinking about bringing Jamal down in the box and you're thinking about using Bobby Wagner down in there as this force that's going to be a pressure-based force, and then you have a guy like this now standing up, let's say, down the line of scrimmage, and the myriad of different looks that you could throw then at opposing offenses, not knowing who's coming, who's going, and how it's going to work. I think this is a guy that could fit into those guys. That's the whole thing I always said about the blitzing. And if they want to start to become a heavy blitzing based team or a team that you need the right players that can all be built together to do that stuff. What we try to do in years past being a blitzing team is we didn't have guys that we ever scouted or brought onto the team for their blitzing abilities. And then we brought in Jamal and it's like, let's blitz. Well, for the rest of the guys outside of Bobby weren't really set to do that type of stuff. And now you're starting to kind of put these guys together who might be able to with him. He was carrying 295 last year, Brendan, another guy that like Young, he tried to get, like you said, get down to the combine. So this starts to come together. 2020, you have the COVID year. 2021, you have Hutchinson and Ajabo. Guys, Ajabo would have been a top 15 pick if he didn't tear his Achilles on his pro day. Hutchinson was a top 2, 3 selection. And so those two guys had him stacked up on the depth chart. I mean, that's not a big piece of shade hit him, right, Brendan? That's not like, you couldn't overcome a top 15 pick. Right? Okay, understandable. And then now this year, he finally gets to go out and shine for the first time with those prior 2 years. Big Ten Defensive Lineman of the Year as well. And I think that's also notable with what he did this year and how he did it. And PFF had him as the 53rd overrated prospect in the draft. Kuiper had him at one point number 22 overall back in November. So he's a guy that there's some fluctuation here to the upside on this guy. It's not necessarily just your typical 5th round guy that you'll kick in for some rotational snaps. I'm not saying there's stardom in his future, Brendan, but that there is a little bit more meat on this particular bone for a 5th rounder. As far as, there's a bit here to this as far as what this guy did. The leverage thing's the key. Can he win the leverage award 6'6"? He does have those long arms, man. He's got the good long arms inside, which are going to help him for that type of stuff.
Yeah. And I do think this is going to be a little bit of a work in progress. I think this is going to take some time because he didn't play that much in college and most of his time was spent playing as an edge player. So I do think that there are a lot of people out there who are thinking this guy's going to make a huge impact as a rookie. I'm not convinced, but I think he'll be really good. I do.
It's hard in general for defensive linemen to have a big impact from a rookie standpoint. It's going to be doubly hard for a guy to have big impact from a rookie standpoint. Changing positions, right? So I agree with you. It's probably not likely he has a big amount of impact. I'd like to just see the team try to find him a role a little bit. Maybe the Miles Adams role of last year. Sprinkle him in for some stuff here and there, and a couple games maybe gets a little bit more starts, and you start to kind of feature him in just a little bit more with that. A couple donations here. Thank you so much, Kevin Mullen, for the $10 donation. You guys are very kind tonight, as always, and I do appreciate it. He says, I guarantee Bradford starts over Haynes by week 6. Question. It's 2026 offseason. Cross and Lucas are expecting a huge payday. Who are we keeping? What beverage we drinking tonight? Love the collab, guys. I've got the coffee going tonight myself. What are you rocking over there, Brendan?
I just got water. I always drink water when I'm on these shows. Soda runs right through me, so I don't want to be doing that when I'm doing a show. And sometimes I do the flavored water, but not right now.
No caffeine, huh? No need for no caffeine. Just always
I don't. Yeah, I don't
highball.
drink any coffee. I do not like it. I mean, I even did the thing. I remember when I moved up to Kirkland years ago, I tried gourmet coffee. Somebody was making it out in our front lobby where I worked. I was like, okay, this is a good first exposure to coffee. And no, didn't like it at all.
Yeah, well, I've known a lot of people like that. If they're not coffee greens, they're just not. You can't get them on. So yeah, but I'm just going with my natural little Pike Place roast over here on my side, Kevin. As far as the huge paydays goes, so we're looking at 226. I think that you've got some pretty good flexibility here, Brendan. Well, first, let's get your thoughts on this. We're coming up. We got to pay them both. I think we might have to go a year earlier than that, which will be part of my answer on this. But what are you doing in that situation? We've got both those guys. And Kevin, let me add on. They're both playing at, let's say, near Pro Bowl to almost a Pro Bowl level, because I think you were baking that within your question as well.
Yeah, I was going to say it kind of depends on what we see from them, right? But,
right.
I mean, left tackles are always going to be more valuable than right tackles. And Cross is also 2 years younger than Lucas. So I think you got to prioritize that. But I mean, we'll see where we are at that point. Like at that point, all these guys, with the exception of maybe DK Metcalf, are going to be off the books and gone. Like Adams won't still be here by that point. Okay, maybe guys like Dixon could still be here, but the books could be really clean by then. Maybe you keep both. There are definitely teams out there that are willing to throw a ton of money at 2 different tackles if they feel like that's the cornerstone of their team. And by that point, we may feel like that. So we may not end up having to make that choice. By then, we might have an owner that is the wealthiest owner in the league, or top 3, and he's willing to put a ton of money into escrow. So therefore, we can do big signing bonuses where the contract is massively backloaded. So I don't think you necessarily have to make a choice, but if you do, I think it has to be Cross.
Yeah, I would agree with Brandon. I think he kind of talked his way around there logically to arriving where I arrive at with this, which is that you prioritize left tackle and right tackle on your team both. And it's not an either or situation. That when it comes to an offensive line, if you have 2 guys playing at a Pro Bowl level, who, by the way, at that time are just theoretically entering their prime or right in the middle of their prime, then you don't offload those kind of guys. You don't move on from those kind of guys. And there'll be these guys. We could easily transition from pouring all this money into the safety position to starting to pour a little bit more money into the tackle position. And especially on the back of maybe building up the offensive line as a strength of the team at the first and foremost, which the stage is kind of set with these 2 guys if they stay on their trajectory. I think what also helps this, let's look at Cross, for instance. You've got the 5 years theoretically of his rookie contract to play with as far as leverage goes with him. So he can't come back at you and do the Orlando Brown thing or the Trent Williams thing and say $27.5 million, or by that point, $30 million a year is what you're going to be paying me at this point, because you go, well, we'll make you wait for the extra 2 years and then we'll franchise you twice after that. Or you can get the extension right now at the price we are willing to pay you. I think that's a lot more likely to happen versus the guy that's on the 2nd or 3rd contract where you can't get him to play ball as much with that type of stuff. I think very much the same thing is very equally true of Lucas. You just have 1 less year because he's going to be a 4-year guy rather than a 5-year guy. So you have to, what's nice about this between the 2 of them is you can structure the deals and plan in advance on them, I think, to where you make it feasible to have them both along at that point.
Yeah. And I mean, let's see what the cap does in the next few years as well, by the way. Also, most importantly, let's remember that at that point, Gino's probably gone, and if things go according to plan, we're going to have a rookie quarterback on a rookie quarterback deal.
Right.
I don't know who it's going to be, but it's probably going to be some rookie on a rookie deal. That frees up your cap tremendously to do things like that.
Exactly. And then it makes sense to do it that way then, because what better helper and aid of a young rookie quarterback is there out there? I think this goes against countering what the analytic people would say, but I think the best aid to a young guy like that is an offensive line that is good from front to back. For 1 through 5, all those guys can hold the line for that young kid, for him to kind of have his growth and development to where he's not under duress all the time or developing bad habits. So there's a lot of reason to do it also, I think, from just a tactical standpoint, and paying him too, on top of it just making sense. So
Mhm.
I go both, Kevin. I'm going both if they're going to play at that level. It's different if they're at a different level, like Brendan said. If we're talking about Cross being sub Pro Bowl and Lucas being average, well, it's a different conversation maybe. But we're talking about them both performing above average to near Pro Bowl to Pro Bowl level. Well,
Mhm.
keep them here. Those are hard to find. Nicholas Newton, thank you for the $2 donations. He says, I have AC over here laughing out loud. Well, it's just you West Siders have finally realized it's going to start keep getting hot over there. You know, you guys can't say that. Well, just this year's hot. So now you guys are starting to actually build your ACs over there and put it in. But I got so many friends, every time it gets hot over there, Brendan, I get texts from them like, oh, it's like the tropic over here right now, man. It's so hot. So hot. Like, oh
Yeah.
man, it's brutal.
I mean, back in, I think it was 2019, I vacationed in Vegas in July, and that was so bad. I think it's kind of desensitized me a little bit to how it can get out here in the summer, because it's
Mhm.
obviously not even close.
Yeah.
But yeah, I can understand that if you're not used to it, I get it.
It isn't. Your blood gets all thick out there in the Pacific Northwest. It just happens, man. We got to build, the bodies, they kind of adjust to the environment. I've noticed that living in warm areas and warm in other places, like your body will kind of change a little bit over time. You'll get used to certain things. So it's a lot. I get it. It also feels like in Western Washington with all those trees, like the heat just sort of is like pumping and radiating the heat waves off of it when it's hot, like it all just serves to help make it even a little warmer. But glad to hear
Yeah.
you're doing good over there, Nicholas. And thank you for
Mhm.
the donation, man. Stay cool. Kevin Mullen with another $2 donation. Thank you, Kevin. He says Mike Morris will be a jumbo defensive end. That's why he's gaining weight.
I mean, if he ends up playing at 295, that's basically what Shelby Harris and Quentin Jefferson and guys like that weighed last year. So I don't think that's really jumbo. Jumbo is like Red Bryant when he was playing defensive end at like 330, and I don't think Morris is going to get that big.
Yeah, I think if you're talking Red Bryant, the 5 tech, I think he has a chance of playing the 5 tech role, Kevin, but it won't be doing it at the size of Red. But I think you might also be meaning Kevin's strong side of the formation, in which case you've got him lined up over those guards. And now there's going to be times where these teams, the new du jour thing, like we're going to try to do, and like I was talking about with the guards a second ago, the guards pull, and now you're that defensive end where rather than getting the guard coming downhill as a 3-4 defensive end, you're actually getting the tackle trying to hit you with a reach block. Well, as Mike Moore showed on his tape last year, you put him up against a tackle, doesn't matter. He's going to manhandle those guys. He's got way too much strength for them. And so that's a place where, especially if you're talking about that being the strong side of the play, imagine Brendan, imagine an outside zone and you've got the guard pulls out ahead of the outside zone. And then that tackle needs to pin down on Mike Morris, and Morris just pushes him into the backfield as the back's coming back across, or as the fly sweeps coming back across that motion. And that's where having that power guy in that particular spot. And you can predict it because like we know we have tendencies on where the stuff goes as far as most of the time where the strong side is going to be. That's where I think they're going to try to set him up for with Kevin in that respect. But yeah, I don't think they'll do the 5 tech Red Bryant where they put him at Red was put up too, Kevin, in the 4-3 over he'd be put right over the defensive end. But something similar in that role as far as how they try to utilize him to be kind of a run stuffer, even though he's being kicked inside, which would seem counterintuitive, Brendan. But I think they're going to try to do that with some of those ways those matchups work now with modern offenses, and everybody trying to get everything locked down to one side of the field, and get a numbers game over there.
Mm-hmm.
Randall, thank you for another $5 donation. Appreciate you, brother. He says, based off the current roster, which position group projects to be the best in 3 years? Realistically, it should be the offensive line.
Cornerback could be the other one, I guess.
I was going to think maybe cornerback on that because you might have Woolen and Witherspoon might be 2 top 5 guys in this league that you have at the same time. And as much as I like the offensive line where it's going, I can certainly see Cross becoming a top 5 tackle and maybe even Lucas becoming a top 5 tackle. It's neck and neck between those two, Randall, I would say. It's
I really
neck and
like our
neck.
running back room too. I think our running back room could be good. We got some really high talent guys in there.
Especially because the team's going to continue to stock into it if it gets depleted. And they're not going to let that. That's always something they've maintained. They haven't at any point deviated off that. I mean, even when they had Marshawn, they were drafting Christian Michael, right, in the second round, and Robert Turbins, they always have gone back to the running back. So that's never been something they're going to deviate from. So, yeah, I would expect if it's not corner or tackle, Randall, then it's going to be running back. If I had to say what I think will be the strongest, 3 years, man. 3 years is a long time. Let's just go tackles because they tend to play the longest of that. They last the longest, I guess, from a injury health standpoint than the other guys. But I think it's neck and neck, Randall, between those. Even receiver might. I mean, DK could still be playing at that time, and Jackson's running full steam, and who knows if you got it in the third spot, So many good units, Brendan.
Yeah, that's pretty good. I'd go with tackle too, but cornerback. I mean, don't sleep on cornerback.
Cornerback's got the highest upside. If the guys play to their upside where they're going, both Tariq and Devin Witherspoon, they've got the no doubt about it type. It's legit. We're having 2 top 5, I think, corners versus 2 top 5 tackles. I mean, it might, especially if they're willing to play some pressure-based scheme. I mean, that might be more valuable to have the other side of that. But
right.
Yeah, I think that's definitely, if they hit their top end, that'll be the better unit. Thank you, Randall, for that donation, man. I do appreciate you. I'm gonna go tackles. He's going corner. Nicholas, another $2 donation. Thank you, Nicholas. He says, I have the pump thing that does heat and AC. Okay, there you go. Got it set up. Smart man. Tell you what, in Western Washington, you guys have been having so many heat waves there lately over the last couple of years. It's probably just good to do it at this point. Why make yourself suffer? Why put ice cubes in front of your fans and try to see if you can manufacture it? Thank you, though, Nicholas. Appreciate the donation, man. And I'm glad to hear you're staying cool out there. It's going to be a hot summer, I think, Brendan. It's already gotten heated like this. It's going to get even warmer. All right, let's move on to the next guy we got here at the back end of the 5th round here. And thank you folks again for all the donos on the channel. Appreciate y'all. We've got, I think, what might almost be my arguably favorite pick of the draft here, Brendan, just not from necessarily the guy that'll be the best player out of this draft or the guy that's going to, be a superstar at the position, but just in the value that you get from it, the fit to the scheme. Olu Oluwatimi. Let's talk a little bit about this guy. What are your thoughts? Are you as hyped up as I am on this guy, or am I just over my skis on this one? Am I over the moon in the for the wrong guy here?
No, I don't think that's the case at all. I don't think he's going to be our best player from this class, but I do think he's the best pick. I think this is the again, it won't be this good, but this is the Tariq Woolen pick of this draft. I do believe that. And it's this perfect unison. It's this perfect unison of all these different elements of need, scheme fit, and value, which I don't think you can say about any other pick in this draft. Like, there are some picks where the value is appropriate, but not where it's like genuinely confusing as to why this guy was still there in the 5th round. And you're like, oh, okay, we just kind of fell into this really good, really promising, really good fitting player. So no, I think this is the best pick of this draft. I made a video that I posted. It was earlier today, talking about this guy extensively, and there's nothing but positive vibes from this particular selection with Olu. I'm probably just going to call him Olu Oluwatimi.
Yeah, me too.
I like the Oluwatimi part, but I tend to go the Olu Oluwatimi. I think that's the right abbreviation for it. It feels right.
Yeah.
He's the only guy that we drafted in this class that is going to be 24 years old by the opening day. So it's a pretty young draft class when this is your only guy who's noticeably old. So Michigan Wolverines. So we stayed with the same college team across these picks. Another guy who didn't test particularly well. He tested really bad in terms of like the 40-yard dash, and his 10-yard split was not good. Everything else was good, but that was surprising to a lot of people because of the way this guy plays. But it's just one of those things, I think, where you just have to kind of be okay with it. Also, he's got really small hands for a center, which is I don't know if that really means anything or not, but it's kind of an amusing anecdote. He has third percentile hands. His hands are third percentile. So I don't know if that means anything, but it's kind of interesting, right?
Ameri tried to shrink his head, but they got the hands instead.
Yeah.
No, he's this guy's awesome, Brendan. He is, and the testing numbers, it's where I feel like we get a feast with Mike Morrison and him both in this respect on this, don't we? Where these guys, you can see they're both, you break this down and you get into the depths of it and you really come simply to a point of he's getting dinged just because of these testing numbers. Like there's nothing about the way this tape looks from this guy, multiple year starter, multiple years starting and playing well. He's getting dinged here just specifically because the NFL is going, oh, a couple 100ths of this time on this thing you didn't run. So now we're taking you from a 3rd round point down to a 5th round point. And the same thing that happened with Mike Morris, where it's just, we're going to ignore the tape completely and just seemingly operate almost solely off of these testing numbers. It feels like to me. Am I off in that viewpoint of it from your standpoint, or is there some, preferential proverbial hole here in his game that you saw with it?
I mean, I do think the testing numbers matter. I do. I do think there's some weight to it, but if this guy tested well, he might have been a 2nd round pick.
Yeah.
That's the thing, right? If he tests well, you're looking at a guy who's bringing it all to the table at that point, pretty much. So he might go into a 2nd round and 3rd round at latest. So getting him in the 5th round, it doesn't really matter that much. Like if it doesn't work out, then oh well, it was a 5th round pick. You can live with that. There's a world of difference between taking a guy in the 1st or 2nd round and basing your decision in part off of testing numbers and then doing it in the 5th round. And the thing is, we have a lot of data with this guy, more data than anybody else in this class. He started 50 games. He is a 4-year starter. Mm-hmm. And the only reason why he doesn't have I think it would be like 54 starts is the COVID shortened year, I guess, because 2020 only played 10 games. Because there were only 10 games to play. Initially, I thought maybe he got hurt that year, but no, he's never really been hurt. 3,500 career snaps, and he played 3 years at Virginia on a very pass-happy offense. They 2021, Virginia threw the ball like 660 times and ran the ball like 250 times. Very, very pass-happy. And then last year, he goes to a very run-happy team in Michigan. A very, very different from the way they played offense in Virginia.
Yeah.
So this guy's seen it all. This guy played not just 2 different schools, but also 2 different conferences, 2 different styles of offense. And he excelled at pretty much every level. Like there's no year that you can point to and say, oh yeah, he wasn't very good that year. He was maybe in 2020, you could say his pass blocking wasn't as good, but he gave you good play pretty much consistently all the way through 4 full years of a collegiate experience. And I mean, when you're getting all that in the 5th round, I think you have to be willing to live with 1 or 2 deficiencies. And if the deficiency is, oh, he didn't look so good when he was running around in his underwear, that's fine.
It's totally fine. And it's an outstanding to be able to pull a guy like this with so much seasoning. And it's the exact type of position, Brendan, and the exact type of position for what we're wanting the position to do right now. And what I mean by that is you want any position on the offensive line to have that level of seasoning, to maybe be a little older cat. It's the center position, because that's your captain of your offensive line. That's your signal caller there. That's your big brain down there. He's got to be a little bit different. So you don't want him in raw and kind of just deer in the headlights at times. You want him locked in every snap, knowing what he's going to do. And that's where this really does show with this kid: snap in and snap out. There was a quote in particular I pulled when I was doing some research here. It felt like he's been here for 5 years, said offensive line coach Sharon Moore of Michigan last season. He's a leader by default because he's the center, but he's also a leader because guys just respect him. They understand how much ball he's played and the way he carries himself off the field and on the field. He's like a Christmas present to the coaches. You want another thing from the center. You want a coach on the football field, a guy that can think like that. I mentioned cerebral earlier with this guy probably 15,000 times here as we talk about him, because it is an important aspect of the center position. You've got to think on your feet and be really aware and understand what you're seeing and see it clearly. And if you're wrong, that's how you get the free blitzer coming up the middle unaccounted for. And certainly when you don't have a center that can do the pass protection calls and that type of stuff, who does it go to now? Goes to the quarterback, which just strains his job that much more to go through his reads and looks, because he's doing the pre-snap stuff of getting his offensive linemen set up in the right place. So you're getting this guy day one, older prospect, ready to roll, 3,500 snaps, like Brendan said, who has a full understanding of what you need to do from the center standpoint. And now here's the rub here, Brendan, on this guy for me. He doesn't test well. So let's turn on the tape. Did he move poorly for you in space? Was he unable to get to blocks because of his lack of athleticism or speed to what you saw, Brendan?
Not really. No, I watched a few of his games. I watched some of this tape. I don't think he's Jason Kelsey out there. I don't think he's throwing blocks like that. I don't think he's even Linderbaum from last year. I'm not saying that, but he's fine. I don't think you're going to be disappointed in the way he plays in that area. And oh, by the way, one last thing I want to mention here. Virginia, when they did run the ball, primarily used a zone-based blocking scheme. Michigan last year primarily used a gap-based blocking scheme. So actually, Olu Oluwatimi has, according to PFF anyway, pretty much the exact same number of zone-based blocking scheme runs as he does gap. So he's done basically an equal amount of both. Yeah. So that's also very encouraging, I think, when you're talking about what we need a player to do, because you know that Waldron likes his zone-based scheme, but Carroll likes the A-gap run. So you got to be able to do a little bit of both. So
you do.
That's another area where you can say this guy has seen everything.
He absolutely has. There's nothing you're going to throw at him he hasn't seen via blitz or anything else. He's been at it on the college level, and that's point. It's one of the reasons I do believe he's going to be ready to start near day one. I know a lot of people are big on Evan Brown, and it's going to be a battle, I think, Brendan. But this kid's, you hear him talk to in interviews as you dive into just hearing how he speaks, and he seems to add up as he speaks to that guy that this is a guy that I see as being a center type. He's got the center kind of personality that you typically see on these guys. And you mentioned Kelsey. The one thing is, you're right. He is not movement based like Kelsey is, who's probably 290, 295 pounds on a good day. This guy's like near 320. He's another one of these guys who's big enough to move guys off the line of scrimmage. He's big enough to take a zero tech head on and get some push backwards at times. Say nothing of being able to definitely hold up in pass protection against zero techs, which I saw on tape over and over again. So he's also got a little bit more of that, a bit maybe more power built to him. Even a guy I think I like Linderbaum, you mentioned. Those guys were a little more, mobile, certainly with Kelsey. But this guy's a little more, though he's not super mobile in the testing numbers, he does have a little bit more of that power to him that maybe those guys don't have from a pure standpoint.
Right. So I watched some of his tape from the last year. I focused in on the Purdue game and the big game against Ohio State. And watching, you see all the stuff he does on the move. He does a lot of pull blocks where he peels out from the center position and goes to hit somebody from the outside. Like he'll go seal off against the edge rusher, or he'll act as kind of like the lead blocker on a play where he peels out and kind of goes through the hole in front of the running back on a running play, stuff like that. But you do see the basic stuff as well. Like he's really good at staying latched in pass protection. Sometimes he gets pushed back. Sometimes he gives ground, but the defender doesn't affect the play because he's latched on and he's not letting go. There was a lot of that kind of stuff. There are plays where he's able to generate movement in the run game. Not a lot. And I definitely noticed it a lot less against Ohio State. Like against the Purdue defensive line, a little bit easier to push guys back than the Ohio State defensive line, maybe. But the fundamentals are not lost with him. The basics of playing the center position, he can do that. He can handle stuff pre-snap without issue. He can, he's really good also at these plays where he's uncovered and then he has to go decide, okay, where am I going to go? Who am I going to help? He's really good at that kind of stuff. Really good at picking up blitzers himself or directing a teammate to pick up a blitzer. Really good at hitting multiple blocks on one play where he'll block one guy and then he'll peel up to the second level to block a linebacker. So you see a little bit of just about everything with him that I think you want to see in a center. It's not overpowering. He's not bull rushing guys into the dirt on every play, but you see more than enough positive things to feel like this is a great 5th round pick.
Absolutely. And again, remembering too, that a lot, especially the center, when you go, for instance, against 4-3 defenses, it's a lot about getting to that reach block or getting to that block in space. I just thought he looked more comfortable in doing those kind of blocks than any other center in this draft. There were centers that tested better. There were centers that in their shorts, in their underwear, as you said, running around. Yeah, maybe they move faster than there. but nobody has successfully moved as comfortably in space and getting to those, either be it second level blocks or wham blocks back across the formation, or like you said, leading the way for the running back in through a hole. He's going to get there every time through, and he's going to lay his block. He's going to do his job. And that was the thing that just stood out to me over and over again with him on his tape. He handles stunters tremendously. One of the greatest parts of his game is just the fluidity by which he can pass stunters off and pick stunters back up, showing up over and over on the snaps that I saw from him and those teams that would try to do it. As you say with him, this is why we love this pick so much. There's really little to pick apart in his game at the end of the day. And there is so very, very many different things that he does and has in his bag that he brings. And I think he's going to bring Brendon from day one, not in this developmental cycle, a little bit like we talk about Bradford or maybe Cameron Young, but this kid, here we go right now,
Yeah. I do not believe he'll be a year one starter. I'll say that. I do think Evan Brown's going to start. Maybe Olu Oluwatimi takes over by like week 11 or 12 or something if Brown's not playing that well. I can see that, but I don't think he'll be a day one starter. I will put that out there.
Are you saying that because you don't trust Olu Oluwatimi is good enough, or because Carroll's track record with not playing?
I think Carroll wants a veteran center. I do. I think that Olu Oluwatimi would be fine. I don't think he would be amazing, but I think he'd be fine day one. But I think we signed Evan Brown for a reason. And however, I do believe Olu Oluwatimi is the center of the future. I do think that he could be our center for the next 8-9 years.
I agree. I see a guy that's definitely a guy that it's one of those things, the cliche things that they say about him, where he'll be a 10-year starter in this league. But I think he could be a 10-year starter, above average starter. Don't know if he'll ever get to Pro Bowls or whatnot, but let's face it, if we can put 2 Pro Bowlers out on the edge, Brendon, with Lucas and Cross, and then you can stack a guy that's just a nudge below being Pro Bowl level at the center position, who really does all the things schematically you need him to do, along with the fact Cross and Abraham Lucas can also do that stuff. Now we only have to worry about the 2 guards and getting those things right for that offensive line to really be fully cooking and rolling. And the analytics tell us you're only good as your offensive line is your weakest link. And now you can start to get to that weakest link at that point and really amp that up.
And I always say right guards kind of grow on trees. Maybe not the kind of right guard that we would want in this offense, but generally speaking, you can find good right guards just about anywhere.
You can make an argument. Some people will go to the left guard as being the 3rd toughest position. I probably fluctuate between the 2, but you can make an argument at that point, can't you, Brendon, that you've taken care of you've grabbed the 3 toughest of the 5 offensive line positions to find guys that excel in those positions at that point.
Yeah, well, center's been particularly tough for us. Let's think about that too. I mean, it's been I saw a thing today. I guess we've had 8 starting centers since Unger got traded. 8 centers over 8 years.
Yeah. It's not been good. And quite frankly, Seahawks history in Seattle's not been the greatest. We've had some guys like Kevin White come, but then they go, or Kendall comes in and he goes, but Blair Bush and Robbie Tobeck and Max Unger.
Tobeck was nice.
Tobeck was nice. But then you had the dead period from Tobeck to Unger, right? So then we've had a couple of dark age periods for the center position, which has been tough. But it's not looking too bad here with this. Nick Craig, thank you for becoming a YouTube member of the channel, man. I do appreciate you on that, and do keep an eye on your community posts, as I'll be getting stuff out there to members over there on there through this off season. But thank you, Nick. Welcome aboard the Hawks Nest. Henry Mars, thank you for the $2 donation. He says, can Olu pull a Russ on Evan Brown? Well, me and Brendon are kind of we're locking horns on this one. We're a little of different mind. I think Brendon's got a solid reasoning behind his approach on this one. And then what is it, Brendon? He's never had a
I don't know if he's never had a rookie, although I believe that is probably the case. But I think he's also indicated he likes that veteran experience at the position, and he doesn't want to be in a bad situation because a rookie blew a blocking assignment or something like that, which is certainly understandable. I don't think it's a bad hill to die on. But I mean, if we had taken John Michael Schmitz, which apparently he wasn't that high on our board, we didn't like him that much. But if we had taken him, I think he would have started day one, because that guy's too good.
Yeah, I think he probably would have too. And certainly the drafting position, let's not fade the funk on this one, Brendon. Drafting position is going to matter with that type of stuff a bit. There's a little more of a push to get a guy out there and do it. I tend to lean back to why probably Carroll hasn't leaned to having rookies. Number one, the timing hasn't come back to just match up right. You had Unger through a lot of the time period. And then when Unger moved on, You had basically, what was it, Britt slid in there for a couple of years, and you did draft Posick, but you had Britt still kind of cemented there at the center position, so you didn't really have an opening for him to go get the job. I mean, they just had paid Britt, if I'm not mistaken, or were about to just pay Britt.
Yeah, Britt had 1 year where he was legitimately really good too,
Yeah.
so he
No,
deserved it at that time.
He did deserve it, but it's also, to me, if we come down to the explanation of why he hasn't gone with young guys, I think it's just the situation like this year with Olu's never presented itself in this kind of way, I feel like. And I think he's tended to not do that because of the line call stuff, especially. He knows rookies coming in there trying to figure out what they're blocking. He doesn't want to have the addition of load on top of them of having to get the line calls right. So now it goes to the quarterback, and Carroll probably doesn't want to do that. But if this kid can pick that stuff up, I think he can slide in there. Either way, though, Henry, if it is Evan Brown that goes in there, what's nice about this is that Evan's not simply been handed the position. It's been that he's beat out a guy that's ready to roll and is going to provide him a hell of a competition battle in training camp, and this has been unlike we've been in the last couple of years where we've had Captain Fuller down there as your backup or Joey Hunt as your backup pushing the main guy. And there was no competition at all from the position.
Yeah, I can agree with that. So I don't think it's impossible. I feel like, and this is kind of a contradiction because this guy has way less experience, I think Bradford has a better chance of taking Haynes' spot than Olu taking Evan Brown's spot.
I would go the opposite. I think Olu's got a closer point to getting on. I do think Bradford's going to start at some point this year, but I think from day one starters, I think Olu's going to have a better chance because I think he's going to go in there, Brendan, and he's going to hit all of these kind of blocks that they've not seen any of their centers hitting over the last couple of years. They're going to see a center pulling in space. They're going to see a center getting to the second level. They're going to see the reach block stuff in training camp. When they put pads on, that's going to show up with him. And that stuff's going to, I think, really impress upon them in a way that Evan Brown's going to have to be mighty impressive to overcome it, I think, at that point. And Olu's such a smart kid. He's played so many snaps. The line protection stuff's going to come to him like second nature, I feel like. And so we'll see. It'll be interesting to see how it plays out. But I think so. I think but I'm also head over heels on this kid as far as really thinking he's going to be a hell of a player.
Well, Bradford's definitely going to start at some point because Haynes is not going to get through 17 games. I think we know that. That part of it has to be considered too. But
yeah, Haynes is like our backup running backs the last couple of years. They find a way, even if they're not in the field 100% of the time, to get injured somehow, some way. You're right about that. Absolutely right about that. All right, well, let's turn it over from a very successful fifth round here, Brendan, and look on in here to the sixth round. And this was a pick that seemed to be very much generated by an area scout who really fell in love with this kid out of a small college in New Mexico. And Seahawks, even though they are pretty stacked up at safety, went for Jerrick Reed out of New Mexico, the Lobos. What was within this pick? What are the Hawks thinking here, Brendan?
Well, you're going to have to excuse me if I didn't do a lot of film study here.
There's not a lot to be seen.
Yeah, kind of hard. And the film study that you do see often doesn't have him on the screen because, they're showing it for like the game. Like I think New Mexico played LSU a year or two ago and they had that game, but it's ESPN broadcast and the safety's often off screen. But from what I can tell, it seems like this guy, pretty smart, pretty good in man coverage. Not somebody who bites a lot on fakes and double moves and stuff like that. A lot of tackles over the last couple of years, so he's been involved a lot. Very versatile in his usage. He's played a lot on special teams, and he also has okay, I got the numbers here. 829 snaps as a box safety, 550 snaps as a free safety, 1,100 snaps as a slot corner, and even 100 snaps as an outside corner, although most of those came in one game where somebody got hurt, I guess.
Right.
So very versatile, very, very flexible in how he could be utilized. It kind of makes sense that this would be the kind of guy somebody in this organization would just randomly fall in love with and to decide, let's make sure we get him. Let's not leave it up to him in UDFA, even though we might be able to get him in UDFA. He might choose to go somewhere else. Let's make sure we get this guy. Seems like he has good ball skills. His ball skills have improved dramatically with every year he's played. Like he had 11 passes defense last year, 6 the previous year, 3 the previous year, and 1 the previous year. So you can see like the progression of him as a player. Smart player. Like I said, a lot of experience. in college football because he was basically a 4-year starter, and his testing at his pro day was actually really good, better than expected. It was like a 4.45 40. It was better than most people thought it was going to be. So there is some upside here. I do think he's a little bit small. He's got short arms. He's missed a lot of tackles the last couple years. Like, I have the number here somewhere. I think he's missed like 26 tackles over the last 2 years combined. So there are some deficiencies there, and it's a physical profile thing. He's just too small. It's hard for him to make tackles when he can't wrap up well and he doesn't have a lot of hitting power. But I'm okay with the pick. I'm okay with them making a vanity pick, especially now that we're here in the 6th round. But I think that the most likely outcome here is that he ends up being like a slot corner in the NFL versus a safety.
So that's part I was going to ask you about with him. And indeed, it is hard to think. I believe that 40 time he ran at his pro day, by the way, would have been like, it's either second or third fastest time of any safety at the combine in what they ran. So it does tell you a little bit about where he was versus peers. He also jumped, I think, like 37 inches at his pro day. So he did put up some pretty good explosive scores, legitimate pro level explosive scores at his pro day. And that does show up a little bit on tape. Like you said, this is a guy that's hard to evaluate because he is off screen. I don't have the all 22 tape. I can't see what this guy's doing secondary wise all the time. He does seem to have really active eyes and really quick reactions to what's going on. That where he's in the right place, right time. It also seemed like I was watching a little bit of the highlights with him, watching his safety mate there, this guy Hansley or Hazley or whatever, did not seem to be a very good running mate next to him. And he was failing a lot of the time, which, I don't know what it definitely hurt their defense, hurt their secondary overall. And he was kind of overcoming that a little bit, but he can hit a little bit. He does have ball skills. He does have that speed. He's got a little bit of a kind of a profile that's to me a little bit similar to kind of a Quandre Diggs a bit to me. And what's interesting to me is I'm a little different with you on this because I think you come to those missed tackles, and from my opinion on it, those missed tackles are born out of those, for instance, last year, 321 snaps in the slot versus only 132 at the free safety position. And that means that he's in there as that kind of de facto, like the slot's now like a de facto linebacker at times in the run game and the way you got to play it. And now those issues with tackling are a little bit on brighter display. I think he can play in the slot in a pinch from time to time, but I think that this team looks at him as a backup to Quandre Diggs at the free safety position going into the season and into the future with some hope that maybe he can develop into a starter.
Yeah, that actually does make some sense. His size won't matter quite as much there. Yeah, he does have that 1 year where he had the 4 interceptions. He did have a year last year where he had 11 passes defensed. So he does have ball skills. Yeah, okay, I can go with that. I think that makes a good deal of sense.
I'm not saying they won't use him and it's good to have, again, more competition where we're coming off the back. This is another position like we're talking about with center Brendon, where you go out there with the slot and you're like, here's our one guy we'll go out there with, and you don't have a whole lot behind him. You're kind of going, well, Justin Coleman, you got anything left? No, nothing left in the tank. Okay. We'll just Kobe, I guess. Now you have guys this year from Julian Love to Kobe Bryant to a kid here, Jerrick Reed, all guys that can come in there and maybe compete in that slot point. But I do think that his upside, his future is going to be at a free safety. And Seattle probably saw what I saw, a little bit of some of those shades of Quandre Diggs in his feel back there in space and keeping him. He's like opposite of Jamal. I want to keep him as far away from the line of scrimmage as possible. Mm-hmm. That's more of what I would prefer to do with him, but I can see also them looking at a slot. That's where I think you could get a guy with some real potential to start in this league out there at the free safety position. Quandre Diggs was, I think picked in kind of a similar place in the draft himself by the Detroit Lions. Yeah. And another guy that, remember, he started slot, went for strong safety and eventually ended up as a free with us. He also bounced around between some positions before he kind of settled in at his final resting place.
Yeah, the thing is, I feel like one of his best skills is in man coverage. And if he plays free safety, there's not going to be a ton of that. So I don't want to lose that. I feel like that might be his best trait.
He can do that really stuff legitimate. I wouldn't. There's no pushback from me on that with you, Brent, on that one. I mean, he's the skills of him. He can line up off that cover, especially when he's on off coverage and he's not doing press. He's 8 yards off, and you feel him having that kind of that ability to trigger up when he's like lined as that slot. Where the few snaps I watched with him, where you could feel that he could trust his quickness and speed to pick up the undercutting routes and then still stays clean over the top. And he had a real comfortability with being in that place. He wasn't like a safety playing slot. He's got like, no, I can do this. I feel good about this. I'm perfectly fine doing this, being in this role. One interesting thing, Brendan, if you look at the PFF scores from last year for Mr. Jerrick Reed, is that it was good, but you look at the advanced ones, the one toughest opponent he had, one of the true, real toughest upper crust, tough opponents that they had to play last year in a schedule that was probably a little bit lesser opponents, UNLV types, let's say, LSU. And that was by far his worst graded game of the year.
Yeah. You would expect that, I think, though. That's just kind of...
You would, but then it's also kind of a test spot. Like, how does he do against potential other NFL level kind of competition out there as far as his play goes? And especially a safety position where it's not, he's getting double teamed. He's like, let's say he was a defensive tackle on that team and they could neutralize him with double teams. You can still go out there and kind of ball out then as that free safety slot guy at that point. And he performed pretty remarkably, I thought, when I was looking at it, worse from where he was, prior. And I think it's not foretelling him not being a good player, but he's interesting. He's interesting. And it's a fine pick. Like you said, I want my scouts, Brendan, when they do fall in love with a guy, to pound the table in that way. I don't want him to be like this, well, I mean, he's pretty good. I want him to come in there and be, fully committed to this. Like, you guys we cannot come out of this draft without this guy. I don't care if it just cost you a 6th-round pick. You will know why you made this pick if you make it. I feel like the energy I was getting off Schneider, because remember, they let the guy call him up, actually. They let the area scout call up Jerrick Reed and announce that he was picked by the Seahawks rather than Schneider. I got a little bit of a feeling from Schneider that it was that type of situation, that kind of energy the scout was bringing was this like, no, I'm telling you, we've got this guy's the guy. We got to do it. So that's how I want my scouts to be, man. Be passionate, be into it.
I mean, whoever that guy is, he's betting his career on this guy in a way, isn't he? If this doesn't work out, it doesn't look good.
Probably good. Like, you're the guy that went to bat for that. But hey, you can also come back and say, hey, it was a 6th-rounder. What do you want from me? Not like we're going to find anything else in there, But we'll see with him. He's an interesting player, Brendan, and we'll see what they do with him this year. He will be a good special teams player, I'll tell you that. I think he had not him. It was the UDFA. Archon Bush. He had a couple blocked on his kicks I was looking at. All right, well, let's turn the page here to our final guy of this draft. And boy, our Seattle Seahawks ended this draft with a mighty bang, Brendan. One of my more favorite 7th-rounders, I think, in history. In Georgia running back, do-it-all man, Swiss Army knife, running back Kenny McIntosh out of Georgia. Tell everybody a little bit about Kenny McIntosh.
Well, this is another example of a guy who probably fell in the draft because of testing. He did not test well. He ran like a slug. But pretty much everybody talking Seahawks football on Twitter after this pick said the same thing after the pick. They said, I watched this guy play. There's no way he's actually a 4.62 guy on the football field. That just doesn't line up. So he ran poorly and he suffered for it, but their loss may be our gain. Because this guy, I think he's going to make a positive contribution to this team on offense and maybe special teams. And I think those contributions will come, maybe not massively so, but they will come in his rookie year. I do believe that. So this guy, he's a pure 3rd-down back. Like, Zach Charbonnet is a guy who I think can play on 3rd down. But he's not a true 3rd-down back in the way that this guy is. This is a little different. This is a guy who is a running back, but he can also play some wide receiver. He can line up even out wide, not just in the slot. He actually lined up wide for Georgia a pretty decent amount. And because of that, there is a clear use case for him in just about any offense. Because every offense has to deal with 3rd down. 3rd down is the most important down in football. So you look at Kenny McIntosh, and as a runner, it's good. I don't think there's anything crazy over the top. Doesn't have a lot of power. Doesn't have, a little bit of power. Doesn't have a lot of speed. It's kind of like the Charbonnet thing where he's going to have a lot of 10-yard runs that don't get to 15 yards because he'll get brought down because he's slow. He's got good vision, although sometimes I think he tries to do a little too much, starts dancing, tries to make everything a long touchdown when he needs to sometimes just go and get it. Runs a little upright, but the special stuff comes into play when he's catching balls out of the backfield and he is catching balls lining up as a wide receiver. So the really interesting thing here, by the way, both Charbonnet and Kenny McIntosh have the same basic receiving numbers. They both were targeted 90 times in their career, and have exactly 75 catches. Kind of just a fun anecdotal factoid there. But McIntosh does it very differently. He had 0 drops in his college career on 90 targets. Great hands. Runs awesome routes. Runs real routes. Not like Charbonnet. Charbonnet just runs to the flat every time. This guy's running routes. This guy's going out as a slot receiver. This guy's playing outside receiver a little bit. This guy's doing all that kind of stuff, and he's making big plays in the passing game. And there's not a lot of wear and tear on him because he really only had 1 year at Georgia where he was being used a decent amount. 2021, he saw less than 200 snaps. The year before, less than 150. The year before, less than 60. So he only really has the 1 year of significant wear and tear on his body. Had over 1,300 yards from scrimmage. Breaks a lot of tackles. He actually has in his career on approximately 350 touches, 124 broken tackles. So that is what you are getting with Kenny McIntosh. A great third down back.
He captured it pretty well. Definitely a great third down back. As you said too, you the way to utilize him as a receiver out of the backfield is so unique, not only just to this draft, Brennan, but to the way running backs who've recently come out. And it's something that's being sought after by NFL teams. Everybody wants the Deebo Samuel type or Christian McCaffrey type. The Niners have gotten 2 of them, but there's a couple of these guys in the league that they're running backs that are also can do real receiver stuff, that they're a 1-2 pairing, that it's not an either or, that you get both with them. And the way that you can really utilize this is in the mismatch game, in that you get a running back, let's say aligned with Geno and shotgun pre-snap, and you have a 3 wide receiver set, and maybe you've got your slot receiver to one side of the field, but you've got everything empty to the far side of the field. Now you bring Kenny out in motion to the far side of the field, and he drags the linebacker, who you also know at that moment struggles to cover in space and doesn't have anywhere near the 1-5-4 10-yard split that Kenny McIntosh has. And when you look at him and when he makes these catches on the tape, especially when he's on the outside, those are the matchups he's getting. And that's where he's going to still translate to be able to do that at the NFL level. And now he starts to dictate coverages to you, because you're going to try to keep that linebacker in one-on-one then in space at that point and trust him. Or now do you have to drag that safety over? Do you have to pull the safety over from the double team on, let's say, DK or Tyler at that point? And it's a lot of ways that you can kind of play that chess at times with a player like this, and how great offenses are using these guys like those kind of chess pieces. And so they need to find a role here for him, Brendan. This is the exact kind of player. Find him a role here. He's not going to be your starter, not going to be your second down back. Maybe it's just as the third down back. I think you can mix a little bit of him and Charbonnet in there with it a little bit. I think there's times, Brendan, where they need to look at having times where Walker's on the field and this kid's on the field. Where he goes out there and acts like your slot receiver essentially, and sees what team, especially coming back across the motion now and fly sweeps and challenging teams like that, because that's really a place that he could help to really hem up for us. That's been so empty in this offense, Brendan, since Waldron's come along. We just do not utilize the fly sweep game enough, especially because that's really a foundational point to McVay's system and how he's used guys. And so you have this guy who can do it. I know Jackson Smith might be able to do it, and maybe Huskridge. I know he's in the best shape of his life. We're hearing stories of that, Brendan. Don't you love those stories? He's in the best shape of his life. But this kid is absolutely electric with the ball in his hands. He makes people miss in space. He's got every move in the book you could ask for, from dead legs to jukes to spin moves to a good, strong, stiff arm. He can set a guy down like that. It's the burst you want from running backs, man. And that 1-5-4, I keep coming back to this with McIntosh, and I probably said over and over, but I keep coming back to this, Brendan. That 1-5-4 10-yard split, the first 10 yards of the 40-yard dash, he was 0.03 away from Jahmyr Gibbs 1-5-1. And Gibbs, to me, on tape, was the fastest, quickest guy on tape, the most sudden running back in this entire draft coming out. And he's this far off of him, and those guys had such a close skill set to each other. So very close.
I think McIntosh stopped to get a cup of water, 30 yards down the 40-yard dash.
I think so too. I think he tripped and he's just like, I don't want to run another one. And they're like, but he's like, yeah, but I got the 1-5-4. Yeah, that's what they'll worry about. Don't worry about this. I feel the same thing, because he's definitely faster on tape. And I can't remember the last guy that ran a 4.64, Brendan, who had a 1-5-4 10-yard split. I can't quite remember. There's probably a myriad of guys that have done this, but it's not a common thing you'd see. And that usually tells you, okay, one of these stats is probably he's not going to fake the 1-5-4. So it's probably that, he's actually more like probably a 4.5-ish guy as a 40-yard guy. And if you're getting that, then you're getting a guy that can absolutely do it.
Maybe one of the press guys was walking across the running platform, and he had to stop let him go first.
And then he went
Yeah.
back there.
Mhm.
He's like, you guys got it. I'm good. Hammy's a little tight. I'm sure I'll be drafted fine. No, we need you. This is going to determine draft. No, it's fine. I'm a third rounder, easy. I know I'm not a first rounder, okay, but second, third rounder, I'll get it. No, you really want to run this, man. It's fine.
Yeah, something. Yeah, I don't know how else to explain that. That's very weird. One thing that I'm concerned about is across 4 years at Georgia, he only had 53 pass blocking reps according to PFF. So he just doesn't have a lot of experience picking up blitzers. So that could be a work in progress. He might not be very good at it. I don't know.
There's some great Senior Bowl reps of him really holding it down in Senior Bowl because they do a lot of that at Senior Bowl. Remember how Pace was just cooking guys? The Ivan Pace, the kid out of Cincy, was cooking guys in that. They were running those. They put those guys to the gauntlet at the Senior Bowl where you got to run those pass pros as running backs against the linebackers, and there's nowhere to run to. There's no double team to help you. And he had a couple reps I showed of him where he showed off being able to do it, where I think he was pretty comfortable with it. I think, too, if you're having him in there, Brendon, unlike Charbonnet, where maybe you have him put his head in there because he's a little bigger to do it, if you're going to have McIntosh out there, it's probably more likely to have him out there than to go into run routes and to get him out of the backfield. That's the best utilization for him then if you're going to bring him out. You can't do it all the time. I know teams are going to blitz you, and you got to have a guy that can get in there and put his nose in there. But I think he's got the will. He seems to love ball. He's hard. Look at the will that he puts running the ball, man. I don't know how many carries I was putting my little highlight I put together from Brendon where he had those Marshawn Lynch-like runs where he's got 15 guys in the rugby pile around him as a rugby scrum. And then he's just still keeping the pile moving forward with his feet. I mean, I know it's not a thing that's like a big, like yard getter and it's more flashy for fans to see those moments, but not all backs do that. A lot of backs will just, the second that you feel them go down pretty easy once they got people with their hands on them.
Yeah, he's got good contact balance. That's one thing that stands out to him as well. I don't think he's a great power back overall because he runs upright and he sometimes doesn't push the pile the way that he could if he got low.
Yeah.
But there's a lot to like there still.
Your points about him running upright are on point. That's a big part of his game where he's got to learn to run behind his pads and with a little bit more of a lower center of gravity if he can pull it off, where he runs like a receiver at times with that running back. And so that's going to get him, smacked and dinged and the ball knocked out at times and blindsided because he's just not protected. Yeah, tuck in that chin as they tell the fighters.
Yeah, and I'm also thinking about like matchup stuff, like when you're playing against this offense in general. Like I think this was something that somebody I had a comment a few days ago that pointed this out. Like JSN is really good against zone defense, right? But he struggles a little bit against man, and DK's the opposite. So when you put both those guys on the field, what are you going to do? Are you going to run zone and let JSN beat you up, or are you going to run man and take your chances with Metcalf? And here's another guy who beats up man coverage. You try to have man coverage on McIntosh with a linebacker, you're going to get beat. So I'm just thinking about how we position ourselves to take advantage of pretty much any kind of defensive style with these picks.
Don't you think that this is a bit of the key to this Seahawks offense unlocking its true potential this season? Not down the line, but this upcoming year. To your point on this, that this is where it really does lie in that you don't just simply come out there and say, here's what we are. We're just going to come at you with what we do. But instead you go at it and saying, here's what we are. Here's what you do weak. We have the strength to attack that weakness and we're going to go after it. And I feel like if they can commit to doing that, they have everything that they're so multifaceted with all the stuff they've got in their closet to pull out. They can grab whatever they need for whatever occasion, whatever party, and they can pull it out. In New Year's, Easter, they got it. But they've got to not do that thing where you try to just go, well, here's what we do. This is what we do. We're going to do it against every opponent. We don't change much off of it. Adjust every week to what that other opponent's so weak at. And I think with those mismatches that you can draw, you could really flourish offensively into a top 5, even a top 3 type status. This is the most deepest I've ever seen this offense, I think, in Seahawks history. Maybe that's going on a limb, but I feel like looking at it pretty hard, Brendon. I can't think of another team. There's teams that have a lot of talent for the Hall of Famers and spots, but this much depth on an offense, this strong offensively going into a year, I can't remember.
Yeah, I actually made a video a couple weeks ago that was asking the question, what teams in the NFL are putting their quarterback in a better position to succeed than the Seahawks right now? And I would say probably the Chiefs just because of just because of Andy Reid. I think he's worth a lot. But, the Chiefs don't exactly have good wide receivers right now. Not really.
I think not, honestly. I don't think that he has a better position. They've lost Orlando Brown this offseason, right? He signs the contract. Now they filled the hole with somebody else, but probably a little lesser there. Tyreek left and they're trying to get, but they didn't get the development out of that one kid they drafted necessarily. He maybe will come on. And I mean, right now, Kadarius Toney is their number one receiver. And you watch the tape on him. That kid's not a number one receiver. He's a gadget guy. You work him in and let him work in space and juke around everybody. That's his whole thing.
Yeah. And I guess the Eagles would probably be a little higher than the Seahawks.
Yeah.
I'd say the Niners too, because they have good skill players and Shanahan. But after that, it's hard to find another team. Like, I really like what Atlanta's doing, but they still don't have much at receiver. They have Drake London and nothing else. I really like their running backs. I think they're building their offensive lineup nicely. Their tight end room is really, really good. But, their receivers really hold them back. Cincinnati has awesome receivers, the best receivers in the league, but other positions are like okay at best. Like they lost Joe. They're probably going to lose Joe Mixon, by the way. That's the expectation. Vikings have good receivers, but they lost Thielen, and now they're probably going to lose Cook. They think they're actually going to let him go because they don't want to pay him. So you look around, there are not that many teams that are putting their quarterback in a better position to succeed than we have with Geno.
100%. He's got as much to work with as anybody else. I think those teams you mentioned might be the only ones above, but he's definitely right there step for step. And if you get some development from the young guys, he could easily overtake them as having the best supporting cast around him to work with. So it's certainly, there's no excuses to be given there if you're Geno on this. It is set up for you to absolutely just explode here. And what's nice about Geno, Brendon, is so much of what he did last year was not him forcing things or just trying to lean on the strengths of the offense. Be it, I know DK and Tyler got their catches, but it didn't ever feel to me like he was forcing it into those guys through the course of the game, that he was letting the offense kind of play out in front of him. Maybe not at the end of the year when things started to get injured and protection broke down and the running game wasn't going as strong, but he was willing with that 70% completion percentage to just sort of take what the defense will give him. And if he applies that same model this year, I think that success will be returned because there's going to be places opened up in the defense against this team. Yeah. You're going to have to pick your poison somewhere.
Yeah, and some of the games where Geno didn't play so well, they were the games where we had like Tony Jones at the running back or banged up Travis Homer hobbling around out there at running back. And it was basically like, I'm thinking about that Panthers game, especially. That was a game where we had no running backs. We had, I think, Travis Homer limping around out there, Tony Jones, the guy who keeps losing his contacts and can't see anything. I mean, it's like the other team knows you're going to pass the ball every play. It's bad. That's not going to work.
Well, and then relate that to earlier in the year, you had a play where he's at the line of scrimmage. Detroit brings up a casino blitz. He audibles into a run to Rashad Penny, and Rashad Penny houses it. And he's got the trust. I go to this guy and he's going to hit a home run if I audible out of this run. Whereas he goes to Tony Jones and Jones will get him a 4-yard run on that kind of play, 5-yard run.
Right. Absolutely. So, I mean, we whatever you think about this offseason, I don't think we had the best offseason in the league or anything, but we have done a great job making sure that if Geno doesn't play well this year, nobody's going to be sad if we move off of him, because it'll be like, we gave you all this, you need to make this work. We have put him in a great position to succeed.
That's a great point. That's absolutely right. If he is not succeeding this year, there is no excuses for it. And there's some quarterbacks in this league that absolutely will have some excuses this year if things don't go right, where they go, well, what do you expect me to do here? He is on the opposite end of that scale. So well said there, man. Garth Knight, thank you for the $5 donation. Says, Brando, did you get them Largent cards via courier yet? Yes, I believe I have gotten them, Garth. I'm going tomorrow to pick up my mail out there. So I will be getting it tomorrow, but I believe the Eagle has landed, and I will confirm that with you on the next one. He says, please explain the situation to Brendon. I think he got it there. Love the content, killer bees. Well, thank you, Garth. And so I saw you had a donation too on the comment section on one of my videos. So thank you for that as well. But yes, I do believe I just texted before my show with my buddy. I got my stuff in over there. So I'll be getting it tomorrow, and I also got the cards ordered up from Amazon, Garth. So we'll have those on the backdrop too, because I got the card holders all ordered up. So we'll have those up hopefully by the next show. I'll have those all ready to roll on the backdrop. I just got to decide where to put them in at.
Very cool.
But thank you, Garth. Appreciate the dono. Nick Craig with a $5. And Garth, thank you for sending that stuff too, man. I'm sorry. I want to make sure too. Just appreciate you sending all that stuff. He's sent me that Craig signed Largent or signed Craig photo over here,
Yeah.
and Ricky Waters.
Yeah.
Nick Craig, thank you for the $5 donation. Says, don't forget Seattle has hit gold at running back in the 7th round before with my favorite 7th rounder, Chris Carson, notable others, Malcolm Smith and David Moore.
Yeah. The other notable 7th round pick in the Carroll Schneider era would be Sweezy. So that's basically your top 4. So maybe McIntosh can make it 5.
And I'll tell you what, if you look at other teams, probably Brendan over that time, let's take that as a 10, 11 year span, that over 11 year span, you found guys that have been starters for you or played in this league and started for you. There's probably whole organizations that haven't had one 7th rounder during that time period that's done anything for them, or maybe only just one. My point being is, Brendan, is I don't think that they just did this by luck or happenstance, that the 7th round, that they tend to find some guys. Jerrick Young last year, right? Mm-hmm. Jerrick Young got on that field, and then Schneider said he felt like Jerrick Young was going to take the biggest step forward of anybody in that rookie class this next upcoming season. So, they've definitely found, I think, through their approach and however they seem to handle that 7th round and where they're going at it. Like you said, Brendan, there you go for the guy. We just don't want to trust this undrafted rookie free agent. Just grab him here. They're good about targeting that one guy overall. That's a hell of a hit rate in the 7th round.
Like, what was that receiver? Oh, Bryce Ford Wheaton. Did you hear about him?
No.
Like, apparently he got phone calls from Seattle and Philly and didn't even answer the phone because he's like, oh, I'm not going to get any playtime there. So he went to New York, where he probably will play. He might be their best receiver right now, honestly. So that's what happens when you get to UDFA. That's an example of, like, the guy can just be like, no, I don't want to go there. I'm not going to get an opportunity. So that's why you sometimes burn the 7th round pick on a guy you didn't necessarily have to.
I saw somebody was mentioning that we didn't spend as much money on like undrafted rookie free agents. And that was kind of my thing with it too, is that it's really not about, you can entice a guy with an extra $10,000, $20,000 as an undrafted rookie free agent, but it's really more to what Brendan's point on this was, which is about availability. These guys are guys that have gone undrafted, who now understand, and their agent has informed them that wherever you go, there's a very good likelihood that that's going to be your one chance. And so you better take the most advantage of it. But beyond you taking the most advantage of it, you better be going to a place also where you have an opportunity. And that's my job as an agent, to make sure I'm guiding you to the right place, not just taking the first offer that comes. But if we've got a couple offers, going to a place where the depth chart isn't got you stacked behind the 8 ball of not even being likely to make the roster, say nothing of never having a chance to start. And so that's really what that whole UDFA game is, Brendan, and probably a little bit of why they like getting Jonah Tavai. Well, hey, we only took Cameron Young. There's an opening here at defensive tackle, right? You go, come on in. We need some help here, man. Which kind of made me surprised, Brendan, frankly, that they could pull off what they pulled off with Bobo and Landers, because those two I would have thought would have looked at the situation and went DK, Tyler, Eskridge, Jackson Smith and Jigba, Jerrick Young. Like, if I'm an agent for those guys, I don't know, man. I mean, maybe Bobo just want to stay on the West Coast. But
yeah, at a certain point, beggars can't be choosers either, I guess.
It's true. Maybe there wasn't a lot of calls coming their way from other teams too.
So while we're on the topic of UDFAs, can I ask you something real quick?
Fire away.
So which of these UDFAs that we picked up do you think make the 53-man? Let's just do this quick segment at the end of the show here.
Okay. I'm going through these videos right now. I'm going through the tape on them because I am doing a UDFA video, and so I've been doing.
I have 2, I think.
Well, give me your first 2 because I'm still.
Yeah, I think my slam dunk is Matt Landers. I still think he's going to do it. I think he's just got more juice, and I know they're making a big deal about how, like, Eskridge finally knows the playbook after 3 years, but I don't know. Like, to me, the only way Eskridge stays is if he becomes like the punt returner.
You and I do this every year, and we hear these stories come out every year. LJ Collier had it happen for like every single year he's with the ball club, having the off season of his life. It's like he's in the basement in the lab. He's just doing reps. It's like, yeah, maybe, we'll see. But okay, Matt Landers, I'm with that.
Yeah, and my other guy is Chris Stoll, the long snapper, who won an award.
That's cheating.
Yeah,
you got to pick another one.
I do have a maybe. I do think the most likely maybe is Sutherland, because he was like the best special teamer, or one of the best special teamers in the country last year. And I would not be shocked if he beat out Jerrick Reed, because he can tackle a lot better than Reed. Maybe we view him as a better special teamer. That may happen And then maybe Jerrick Reed goes to the practice squad. Hopefully we can get him through.
Mhm.
But I think he's got a shot.
All right. So I like your Landers one. I do like that. And I think I would be pretty close to saying that I'm nearly agreeing with you on that one. I think that for him to make the team, it's got to be Eskridge falling off, of course. He's got the thing over Eskridge, though, Brendan, where he can play on the outside. Eskridge ain't never playing on the outside. That's not happening ever. So that's one place where it's like, it's going to be hard during that part. I'll go with these two. One is going to be Jonah Tavai for me out of San Diego State. And I went through his tape, and it's funny, I went through him, and I'm doing a UDFA video with him. So I'm looking at those cut-ups and getting the cut-ups. And so, I'm looking for good snaps and keep the cut-ups together. So what I'll present in my video. Then I go over to Cameron Young, Brendan. Now, look, Cameron Young's got the tougher competition, different jobs, different duties, has to do different things. But there's so many more flashier points from Tavai's tape. It's understandable why his PFF grade was as good as it is watching the tape, because he's just shooting gaps, penetrating, trying to just kind of cause havoc. There's times where they're moving Tavai out as an edge at times. He's another one like that Mike Morris thing where he's athletic enough to where they'll actually give him those snaps out there and let him try to run it and see what he can do. And he actually is having an impact. He's having a pass rushing impact off the edge. You're not going to play him there at the next level, Brendan, but I do think that he has a little bit of juice there to him. He's got a little bit to his game. And I think that he's well suited to this gap and a half scheme that we've gone to now, to where, he can do those type of things. And it's a little bit similar. And I think Young did that too, a little bit. And with Mississippi State, what they asked him to do with that, but he's a guy that I could see making it, especially when it's not that deep of a room as it stands right now. There's certainly an opening there. If a player can kind of break through like he possibly could.
Yeah. I thought Tavai was going to make the 53-man until we signed Mario Edwards. Now I'm a little more skeptical. I think he kind of takes a spot that Tavai could have taken. Now I look at Tavai and feel like maybe he'll make the practice squad more so, but he has a chance too. Absolutely.
So we've got Cameron Young, we've got Jerrick Reed, Draymond Jones, Mario Edwards are your four interior defensive linemen, and
Miles
Mike
Adams.
Miles Adams. That's true. Yeah.
I still like Miles Adams. Still a fan.
I'm still a fan of Miles Adams too. And I think he's definitely he's got a little bit of time to, he's got a leg up. So that's probably pretty smart that there might be a chance that it just becomes a numbers game there for Jonah. The other guy I was going to say was,
were you saying Bobo?
I was thinking Bobo. Yeah. So I'm thinking, no, I'm going Grindorf. I'm going Grindorf. My theory on this is this: Grindorf comes in and he plays really well. Tight end out of North Dakota State. And then Seattle finds a pathway to say, hey, he'll be good enough for us. We could move on from Fant in training camp. And then they kick in. Grindorf is the third. The other two guys bump up to the two. They're running more 3 wide receiver sets anyway with Jackson Smith anyway this year as a transitional point. So Grindorf ends up making the team. I liked my initial look at tape on him. Pretty athletic. Kid's a willing blocker. Obviously, competition's a big thing with him on that. But
poor man's Darnell Washington.
There we go.
He's got the size. He's got the Darnell size.
He does. He does got that. So, I like what I see with him on that, but I'll go with those two. I think it's going to be an uphill battle. Even guys I've like looking at Archon Bush's tape. He's pretty good at Cincinnati, but I mean, man, it's so stacked in some of these units, Brendan, where they did take 25 undrafted free agents, but there's not necessarily a ton of spots here that we're talking about at the end of the day, really. I mean, it's going to be an uphill battle on the defensive line. Linebackers, I guess you could say that's sort of that. There's a lot of clearing there for the middle linebacker, especially, but edge, MJ Johnson, like good luck, I
mean, I'm pretty happy with our edge room. I don't think there's room for a UDFA.
No, there's not. There really isn't. So it's gonna be hard kind of make this team, but I do like those guys. And Bobo, I'll tell you, he's got an outside chance. If Eskridge comes in and he's injured and that door starts to open now a little bit more for Bobo, there's a way where Bobo is so dynamic and strong as a slot guy that they just think Landers is just okay as an outside guy, but they like how strong Bobo is with what he does, that they go, we'll have him override over the top of Landers, especially if Bobo can be better in special teams. Maybe that comes down to a little bit of that, and then Jerrick Young, of course, is still lurking there. I just love the fact, Brendan, we've got so many positional groups we can look at here that are now with some strength to it. There's some legitimate battles going on as opposed to just guys being given those spots, like a little bit how we were faced last year with it.
Sure.
A couple other donations here. Sorry. Nick Craig, thank you for the $2 donation. Appreciate you, man. He says Holton Allers takes advantage of emergency quarterback rule.
He's kind of interesting, but he's got a really weird release. I don't like it. He's got a funky release.
I tend to think too, Nick, that when they go to the third quarterback, it's going to be probably a guy that's going to be Sean Mannion over a guy being a rookie.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, maybe Holton has a chance at like the practice squad, but even then, I think it, like you said, Sean Mannion, somebody like who was Russ's guy who we had as our backup QB, Austin Davis.
Oh, Austin Davis, yeah.
Yeah, there was Austin Davis. He was our third string quarterback for a little bit there. Somebody like that. Somebody who's you can put him in an NFL game and it's not like a complete train wreck. It's not like I'm gonna get sacked every other play. I'm going to throw the ball into the dirt. It's going to be somebody who can throw a football.
Yeah, I think you got to have a guy that's a functional guy to do this, Brendan, because there's no price not to do so. Whoever you're having, you're carrying as a practice squad guy. So their salary is going to be allotted to what it's allotted. They're not going to be making a huge amount of money off your cap. So it's better if you've got a guy there, unless you have a real developmental guy, which even if you have a developmental guy, is likely to get plucked off the practice squad if he's any good. And I just come back to, you get the functional guy that's a dime a dozen in the NFL, that's backed up for half a dozen years in the NFL, who can go in there and be functional, and understanding that you want to do this because you might have a Super Bowl capable team here, or a team that's maybe capable of making a run where they need a quarterback for a game or two, or for a half of a game, to go in there and just be somewhat functional a little bit, so that we and the rest of the team will carry you through. If you're on a rebuild team, or you got that, maybe you're a little bit more likely to go with a little bit more of a outlier there for the third guy. But I think you definitely go a little bit more legitimate this year, given the nature of this team and where they are as far as their
Yep. The old Brock Purdy rule.
old Brock Purdy rule. Yeah. Giving them Niners. Always got to give those Niners, got to give them little benefits, Brendan, got to help them out a little bit, man. It's been 30 years since they've won a championship. And so, the NFL feels bad for them. They feel bad. Your quarterback got broken. Your little 7th round quarterback got broken.
Yeah. I mean, we know it's not so much about that as it is that game was not fun to watch, and the NFL doesn't like it when their product isn't fun to watch. So I get it. Like, I don't have a problem with it. I think it's probably a good rule.
I don't mind it either. I don't think that it says anything about a team not covering their bases that their third quarterback's not some amazing guy. I think the NFL's put the roster restrictions in as they have. It's hard for teams to pull this off in general. So I'm okay with the rule too, but it is funny that it's coming on the heels of the Niners. The poor little Niners.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, although it does mean there will never be another Tom Tupa moment in the NFL.
I know. That does suck. Tom got the glory robbed, though. Rick Meyer robbed him of his glory, because then Rick came in there and then it all went to hell.
Yeah, it did. I mean, he almost won that game.
He would have gone down in such lore for punters if he had gone down and able to actually pull out the win in that game. Would have been magical. Thank you, though, Nick, for that double nation, man. And we'll see about Holston. We'll see how maybe he lights it up in the preseason with that weird kind of wonky style. You never know. Randall, thank you for the another $5 donation. Appreciate you, brother. It says, if Waldron were to bail on us for a head coaching job, you view Andy Dickinson as an offensive coordinator. Would we offer him?
I believe that if Waldron goes to a head coaching job somewhere else, he would probably take Dickerson with him. That's usually how this works. You take a couple of your guys with you, and that guy becomes your offensive coordinator. That's like how the process goes typically.
Especially considering he took him with him from LA, right? So it's
right.
Sort of like, this is definitely that is sort of the logical conclusion of that, Randall, is that if he pulled him from there and he's going to just keep him on his rise, and why wouldn't Dickinson then follow him at that point? So no, I don't think it's likely. It's more likely he goes with him, as Brendan says on this one. You're going to probably have to come back in and just find something, wholly new if Waldron does move on. So we're going to have to restock the whole thing front to back.
Yeah, which is, I mean, look, if he has the kind of season that I think he's going to have with all these new toys he has on that offense, there will probably be, although I kind of expected it to happen last year with a guy like Ben Johnson and it didn't. So maybe we're just not seeing that kind of stuff as much as we used to. And I don't understand why. Like, I would much rather go try to find some offensive super genius young coach like a Kevin O'Connell or a Shane Waldron or a Ben Johnson than trade a bunch of draft capital for Sean Payton. Like, I don't think there's I think that's way better, but it seems like a lot of these teams still want the old stalwarts like the Sean Paytons, even if they have to give up a fortune to get him.
It certainly does. There are those teams willing to go down that road. I think that the Walmart family too was trying to give the fans a bit of a win from a PR standpoint because the Russell situation had gone so much in the toilet. And it's like at least Peyton gives this, whether it works or not, it at least gives the fans a sign of a commitment to winning and trying to turn something that looked like it was completely about to head into the disaster zone fully last year if it maintained course. But you're right. The retreads come through, right? If you're a retread with any, unless your name's Jim Caldwell, you're going to get another job out there. So, there's a chance I think somebody does hire him, but it just depends on availability too with this, Brendan. Like how many coaching jobs will there be next year? It seems to fluctuate with that. It's not always that we see a ton of firing. Sometimes there's a couple. The nice thing to me on this, Brendan, is if you did lose Waldron, which would hurt, and he certainly showed his colors last year being an up and coming rising offensive coordinator. Whoever you're going out there to try to recruit to come in, whoever Carol gets to pick up the phone and go, Sarkisian, hey, how would you like to have DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett, and Jackson Smith as your receivers, and Zach Charbonnet and Kenneth Walker as your running backs? And I've got two of the best bookend tackles in the sport as well. And we've got a tight end room stock 3 deep, and we're up and coming on the interior of the offensive line. You want the job? I think it's going to be kind of a happy landing spot for probably a pretty bright coordinator out there at that point, if the job did become available.
Yeah. And like I said, there are those guys out there. There are definitely those guys out there. You can do it.
Yeah. So it's okay. The good, that's the good side of it to me if we did lose him. But he's got to go out and put a roof another year. And even then it's no certainty at that point, Randall, even that doesn't guarantee. Like Brendan, who was it? Ben Johnson, you said? Which guy's that?
Detroit, the Lions OC. I thought he was going to get hired, but no.
Can't get no love. They're not believing it, I guess. So probably will after this year if he can do it again this next year with them and keep them up on their roll. And
of course it always depends on how many job openings there are going to be. Like if the Jets don't have a good season, they're going to need a new head coach, right? Mm-hmm. Apparently like Miami already doesn't really like McDaniels that much to the point where they almost fired him last year. So
really?
They could fire. Well, apparently if he missed the playoffs, they were going to fire him. That was the rumor at the time. So they barely made it. So he barely kept his job supposedly.
In year one?
I don't know exactly what it was. Maybe they were really angry about how he handled the Tua situation, getting him killed. I'm not sure, but the story right at the end of the season, I remember very clearly, people kept reporting he's out unless they make the playoffs.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, their owner's a little wild too down there. He's known for being a little bit of a live wire.
I don't think anyone in the AFC North has their job on the line. AFC South is probably good. AFC West, the Chargers guy.
Staley and McDaniels.
Yeah, those guys could get fired if they don't have good seasons. NFC East, I think everybody there is... Oh, Ron Rivera could get fired. So there aren't necessarily a ton of automatic openings. Like O'Connell is safe. I think the Lions guy is safe, even though I don't love what he did this offseason. He's got a little bit of goodwill there.
Yeah.
Packers guy safe. Bears guy has to have a little bit of time.
Absolutely.
Maybe some of these guys in the NFC South, I guess, like the Tampa. I think Todd Bowles is bad, and I don't know why they kept him. So him maybe. So there are some potential openings.
They wanted to keep continuity. That was a continuity. They had the Super Bowl and they're coming back off the year of that, and they wanted to keep everything close as they could.
Yeah, Dennis Allen sucks, so I think he could get fired, I guess, if they don't do well, especially now that he has a quarterback. But I don't think Atlanta's going to fire Smith because they don't have their quarterback yet. I think they're going to be understanding there.
Well, like you said, too, they're going to be okay next year, I think. I mean, they're going to be at least – they're going to be – I'm not saying they're going to be like a perennial playoff, but they're like – they'll be pushing next year. I think they win more games potentially than they lose. I easily could see that, especially in that division.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And nobody in the NFC West is probably in any danger of getting fired. So they're probably going to end up being like 4 or 5 openings.
Yeah. And if he guides you to a top 3 offense this year, then certainly maybe he's one of those guys in that top 5 status of things. But I think Harbaugh is going to go out and have a near national title year this year. He's already been playing footsies with coming back to NFL. So that's one guy that comes and takes the first job right off the top of the stack. And we'll see how it goes kind of beyond that, but It's potential. It's a potential way it could go, man. If he keeps on his rise, that's what happens is these guys do continue their upward trajectory, Hell, I think a guy like even Sean Desai next year, he's got that Eagles defense he gets to go to.
Yeah,
I think he has a very good chance of becoming a head coach after next year because he's going to have a lot to work with on that defense, even if he's not doing a particularly great job, Brendan. You know what I mean? Like I'm not down on him, but just even if he doesn't, it's like that defense is going to carry a lot of that load itself to me.
Yeah. Kellen Moore, honestly, don't sleep on him if he has a big year for the Chargers. He's their OC now.
Yeah, that's true. He's got a little bit more to work with there with that Chargers. Not a little bit more than he had with the Cowboys, but he's maybe allowed to just run free because it sounds like the Cowboys, there's a little bit of a fight between him and McCarthy between I want to pass, I want to run, I want to pass, I want to run.
Yeah.
And they kind of locked horns with that stuff, it sounded like. So, he's another guy certainly out there potentially that could be another name to be worth watching. But
and 8 of the assistant coaches on the Niners are going to get hired so they can get a bunch of third-round picks again.
Exactly. They're 6 3-round picks. Exactly, man. They're already setting the stage for that, I'm sure. So, well, they got that defense. They did get the guy, Carolina, right? They got the Carolina head coach that filled in last year. So he could be a guy that it goes
Steve
on.
Wilkes.
Steve Wilkes. He did a really good job with that Carolina Panthers when he filled in. And so, there's another guy for sure who could be that guy. So it's just a good amount of candidates, actually, surprisingly, when you kind of go through it. There's actually a few guys that certainly could. They have it's all dependent on what kind of years they have, but they have some reputation behind them. They've already built up some, stuff on that already, so to speak. So, well, that does put us through, Brendan, all the way through these 7 picks in the draft. What was the final grade that you gave on the draft, by the way?
I think I went B+. It's a really good draft. I'm not quite going to call it great, but I do think it's a very good draft that has done a very effective job of filling needs and taking care of business.
Absolutely continues to take the steps forward, right, Brendan, towards building a Super Bowl contender. You may not be there this next year, or you may be there this next year, but you are taking the right steps to get there eventually one way or the other. And that's, I think, the most important part of this draft coming on the heels of last year's draft. Is that a fair way of presenting it?
Yeah. I mean, it's certainly the second best draft we've had in the last 10 years. Like it's not even close with any of the other draft classes over the last 10 years. So we're definitely headed in the right direction.
Do you feel like I felt as well, that this was a draft of value and that's what was carrying this day at the end of the day for them, like last year, and that went indifferent from where it's been in previous years? Or do you just find yourself saying, hey, well, no, they just got the picks a little bit more right these last couple of years?
I think the approach has changed. It must have changed. Like, I don't think the team, like obviously last year it was more obvious. We took Cross and Lucas. The old Seahawks never would have done that. But even with some of the picks this year, I don't know if we take Witherspoon at number 5 overall with the old Seahawks, because I think then we were thinking more narrow in terms of like, well, we don't need to take a cornerback that high. This year,
32-inch arms.
Yeah.
You got to think for years where you didn't go with guys less than 32-inch arms.
Yeah. And, you probably would have said, well, we don't need to take a cornerback at 5. This year, you decided he's our favorite player on the board, so we're just going to do it.
Yeah. Agreed. Agreed. I just come away thinking they've done something different here, Brendan, and it makes me so stoked because we saw it replicated this year because they stayed in the pocket of that philosophy in this draft, like last draft. And it's not a coincidence that you had these 2 best drafts in the last 10 years back to back, 2 of the best drafts in Seahawks history back to back. And it's because I think they are letting the value of the board just guide them wholly through, Brendan. And this is what good organizations do in the league. It's this whole thing that gets spoken about, Brendan, how the draft's random for everybody. Some do good, some do bad, and everybody regresses to the mean eventually. But no, there are organizations that do it better. And there's a method to their approach, a certain method to their approach. It's not a happenstance or by luck, but this is why we choose to do it this way. And we're going to get out the best results by doing it. And our Seahawks team, I feel like, Brendan, finally the last 2 years, after going as 180-degree different opposite way from that, have turned headlong into it now. And it does give me a lot of hope here for us having a potential really soon Super Bowl run, no matter how we spend our money almost, because you're drafting so well at this point.
Yeah.
I got one last little donation here, finishing this up, right? Thank you, Garth, for finishing this up. And again, too, did get your deliveries on that, so I'll have that up behind me here, certainly. But thank you for the $5 donation, man. Appreciate, guys, all the support tonight. He says, rest in peace, Tina Turner. What's y'all's favorite Tina Turner song?
I mean, I don't know that many of them, I'll be honest.
Big wheel keep on turning. Proud Mary keep on burning.
Yeah, I know that one, but I don't
Burning,
know it from her. I know the Creedence
burning.
Clearwater Revival version. I know, like it's one of those things where I know other versions of her songs better than her versions in most cases.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not super familiar with a lot of her catalog. I'll go with that. My song, so Proud Mary, will be the one I go with. You got the What's Love Got to Do with It. That might just about be all the only Tina Turner songs I really know.
Yeah, this might be a controversial take. I don't know, but I really like the James Bond song she did. I think that was actually a good one of the better ones.
She did do a good James. There's not been a lot of good James Bond songs either. There's a lot of those that are like, you know, dragging the cat, you know, like
Yeah.
they do like people do the Star Spangled Banner. They go over the top, you know, every note's
Yeah.
like,
Yeah, I like the Sam Smith one that was a few years ago apparently was written in like 20 minutes. I read somewhere like he wrote it in 20 minutes and I was like, yeah, you can tell.
I, whenever an artist says that, I'm like, keep that one to yourself. You know,
Yeah.
I just woke up out of bed and I just thought, put my pencil down, I put a couple of words, I had a song. It's like, oh, just tell people you crafted it over weeks and months. You know, don't come up with that one. We got some
Yeah.
other good ones here. It was GoldenEye. She did the
Yeah.
GoldenEye song.
Yes, she did.
That's one of the best all-time Bond and one of the best all-time video games. You tell me you did GoldenEye back in the day.
Not back when it first came out, but I did go back and play it after the fact. I didn't have an N64, so I was kind of SOL
brutal.
there.
You missed it, man. It was a golden era. It was a golden era.
I'm sure it was. I'm sure it was.
With the quad screen. So you have your buddies. Don't look at my screen. Stop looking at my, because it was one television screen, but it'd be 4 boxes. And so the rules were you lock in on your box, bro. I'm gonna feel your eyes. I don't want to feel this stuff. I feel this stuff. The game, it don't count. We're restarting on one eye. And then
and you could hold the N64 controller in one hand, so with the other hand you could like punch somebody in the face if you're like,
totally, yeah, you just got the one stick there and like, hey, just stop it, dude. I got you.
Yeah.
No, there
was was Tina Turner the one in Beyond Thunderdome?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, with the wig.
Okay. Yeah, I know her from that better than her actual music because I've seen that movie a few times. I actually like it a lot. I like it more than most people, and yeah, that's actually what I know her best from.
I like all the Mad Max movies, man. I think they were all solid. I think even the what wasn't there the third one?
Well, there was the original, which was not really a Mad Max movie. It was like before the collapse of society, and Max was just a cop.
Right.
And then there was Road Warrior.
Right.
And then there was Beyond Thunderdome.
Right.
And then there was the new one. There was the modern one.
I like all four. All four are awesome. Even the most recent one was awesome.
Yeah, the most recent one was incredible.
I thought the most recent one was awesome about too. It was a guy because it was the original filmmaker. In fact, I just watched one of his movies last night. The original filmmaker that had done the original Mad Maxes, but it had been 25 years, right, since he had done the sequel. And it just felt like a guy that had been jotting down the notes for his future sequel. Like, I want to have this in and I want to have this in. And it's like the opposite of like, we're talking about these guys writing these music quick. He took the time laboriously to just kind of build this thing in his head of how he wanted to do it when he eventually did it. It's not the most grandest of movies, but there's these little details all sprinkled throughout the film that just show off a little bit of extra enrichment to the environment. I felt like a little bit.
No, coming out of the theater after Fury Road was just like, it's like you just come out and it's like, I've never had a film experience like that. I've never seen a film that visually attacks you like that. There's so much cohesion in the action scenes. There's like so much like the way things move off screen and then they're in the place where you would expect them to be when the scene goes back to them. It's like really an impressive film. And I've heard rumors of a sequel, but it's been 8 years now, so maybe it's just not going to happen, which is too bad.
He waited 25 between Thunderdome and Fury Road. So, I just want Mel back. If we can get Mel back, get Mel and Hardy maybe both. I don't know, just
I got to find some way to do that.
I did like having Mel back in the role. I was preferencing that one. So
yeah,
but we'll see. We'll see if they do. That guy's a good filmmaker though. He's done
George Miller.
Yeah, George Miller. He does like Happy Feet and Babe.
Yeah, he did Babe. Yeah. George Miller's interesting. Very interesting career.
Yeah, he's a pure filmmaker though. He's not one of those guys that's like, well, he's only a visual guy, or he's a pure all the way around from writing stories, dialogue, all of it. To weird movie I watched last night, 4,000 Years of Longing or something. It's on Prime right now.
I've heard about that. I don't know very much about it.
It's a little strange. It's not bad. Just a little weird. Just a little
Yeah.
weird.
I actually went to the theater to go see the new Guardians last night.
Hmm?
Yeah, I liked it. I didn't like it as much as two. Two, I thought was actually really good. I really liked two, but I did like it. It's good. It's maybe it might be end up being the last Marvel movie I see in the theaters at this point. I don't know
They're not going in the
because
right
it's
direction.
starting to fade a little bit. Like I didn't
Yeah.
see the new Black Panther or the new Thor, and I did see Ant-Man because my dad really likes Ant-Man and he wants to see all those movies. But I don't know. It's like looking ahead, it's getting a little bit thin.
The luster's looming off. They've got to find a different gear to go in. They're in kind of one note right now, and they just got to find a new way to refresh that whole thing a little bit. I think.
Well, they kind of got screwed with the Jonathan Majors thing because he was going to be a huge part of what they're doing, and now they're just stuck.
Yeah, now they're gonna have to get creative. But they get the multiverse thing now, so they just be like, "Oh, it's the dude from the same guy from the other thing now, just a different,
Mhm.
You know, that's the nice thing
Yeah.
about the multiverse is it covers up everything, which is also part of the problem. Well, Brendon, I've had a great show here with you, man. As always, we did the full breakdown. So, folks, if you haven't already, please do go over to Seahawks Brendon Nelson. Search that up in the YouTube bar. Go over to his channel. Subscribe up over there. Does darn near daily, if not multiple daily content a day over there. And we've covered both sides of this draft. We did last week on his side the first 4 rounds, and then we did the back here draft here today. So that's if you want to cover the first part. If you didn't see that, that's over there on his side of things. I appreciate you for doing this, Brendon. Thank you as ever
No
for
problem,
jumping
man.
on in here.
And this may be our last show for a little while because we are entering the lean phase.
We're definitely entering the lean phase. We know a lot of you folks are going to go on your vacations and do all that. So we're going to try to maybe come together if we can with a couple of creative shows here, maybe into June, just a little bit. I'll be doing a vacation at the end of June. So we will be picking up fully once we get into season and all that, back into the dual shows a week stuff as we do. But and if anything breaks, obviously me and Brendon will be on top of it. If Seahawks make some weird, crazy, outside the box kind of move, we'll see how it goes. So, but
Yeah.
but thank you, Brendon, man. Appreciate you for doing this. It was wonderful us covering through on this draft. We're going to definitely do this every year and hopefully hit it just as hard every year, even if we don't have 10 picks. We just have our mirror 7 or 8. Well, we got 8 right now for next year.
Yeah, we got 8 right now. We got 8. And I mean, that's still higher than the average team. And God, did we have anybody sign in free agency that we could get a comp pick from? Probably not, right?
No, because you signed the Draymond Jones signing at all offsets. So you did Draymond Jones, Jerrick Reed, and Evan Brown.
Drew Lock, man. Well, no, Drew Lock was in-house.
Nope, he's an in-house. But those 3 guys, and then what'd you lose on the other side of it? You had
Penny,
who
didn't sign for that much, so he might not even count. You lost guys like do guys like Al Woods and Quentin Jefferson and Gabe Jackson count because you cut them? They may not.
Releases. It has to be a pure as the driven snow free agent. Like you ended your contract, and then that's the only way.
Yeah.
So the offset's not even going to be in the vicinity of close to making it. Bobby Wagner even counts. So you're
true.
You're 100% in the negative. You get nothing and less than nothing. But if you're going to go that way, Brendon, go all the way, right? Don't slightly offset it, fully offset it to where you because you don't get penalized for going fully the other way if you're in a negative on the amount you pull, and they don't take picks away from you on the other end of it, right? So, hey, why not?
May as well. In for a penny, in for a pound.
In for a penny, in for a pound. Go all the way. No, hey, why not? Well, thank you, man, again for doing this. Kept you here a couple hours, folks. Appreciate you guys for watching. Please do hit that like button if you haven't already, as we're just about finishing up here, and do get over there and sub up to Brendon's channel. I don't know when we'll be back, but we will be back, folks. We will be back soon. So, if we are gone a little while, there's a tendency to forget things. There's a tendency to get in the summer, to get the sun in your head, to start forget things. You're going to start losing track about the Hawks. You're going to start losing track about this upcoming potential championship run that we are just about on the precipice of seeing undertake. So do not allow that to happen. Don't let that excitement simmer down. I want that excitement simmering up. I want you remembering at the forefront of your mind, you might have one of the more special teams in Seahawks history ready to roll this upcoming season. Are you ready? I know Brendon's ready. I don't got to ask him. He's ready. But just in case you're not ready, just in case there's a little bit of question in your mind, don't you ever forget. Go Hawks.
Oh, Hawks.